this meeting to order. If you will join in the pledge to our nation's flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good evening. We will have roll call and declaration of conflicts.
Councilmember Abram? Here and none. Councilmember Bixel?
Here and none.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Here and none.
Councilmember Moniz?
Here and none.
Mayor Bublak?
Here and none. All right, approval of agenda is posted or amended.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Moving on to Go Green Week. We have a proclamation. Who's going to handle this? Who's doing the presentation? Nobody wants to. Come on, you guys are wearing the shirts.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Monica, and this is Lupe Madrigal, and we're from Municipal Services, and we're here to present this year's Go Green Week. So a little about our Go Green program. The city likes to partner up with participating K through 12 schools, and the main goal is to educate students on the importance of water conservation, recycling, pollution prevention, and energy efficiency. This year, we have 11 participating schools, and our Go Green program turned 16 years. There's also several activities that students are able to participate in, like tree planting, live animal shows, recycling contests, teen shirt contests, water treatment facility tours, Turlock Recycling Center tours, and bus tours by transit. So some accomplishments. Through our Go Green program, students and staff have planted 335 trees, raised over $14,000 through recycling, and saved over 20,000 pounds of waste from going to our landfills. We also want to remind everyone during the week of Go Green Week, Transit will be offering free bus rides from March 11th through March 16th. And we also want to thank everyone involved in Go Green, Turlock students and faculty, City of Turlock staff, Turlock Transit, Turlock Scavenger, TID, and our vendors. And lastly, we would like to recognize this year's Go Green t-shirt winner, Annette Carrillo. Annette couldn't be here today, but we are extremely proud of her and her design. And so that's our presentation. Awesome.
Okay. So on behalf of our city, we have a proclamation about Go Green Week. The City of Turlock Council is committed to partnering with our schools to provide educational enrichment opportunities for Turlock's children. Go Green Week provides an opportunity for students, educators, government, industry, environmental organizations, and residents to work together for a prosperous and sustainable Turlock. Go Green Week will help produce the next generation of engaged citizens committed to preserving natural resources and enhancing the quality of life in Turlock. For the last 16 years, the City of Turlock and participating schools throughout Turlock have planted 335 trees, raised more than almost $15,000, and have diverted approximately almost 22,000 pounds of waste from the landfill through Go Green Week. For that, I, Amy Bublak, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of City of Turlock, and on behalf of our entire city council and our citizens, do hereby proclaim March 11th through the 15th of this year as Go Green Week, and we hope that everyone participates, and we thank everyone for being a part of this. So if I might, thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Andres? It's your turn, sir. Thank you.
Alrighty. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. City Manager, and staff. Andres Ramirez, Deputy Director with Townsend Public Affairs. We for those who don't know, serve as the city's contract lobby firm and grant writing firm. So this evening, I wanted to provide council and the public with a brief recap of the 2023 legislative session, and then provide a look ahead to 2024, our efforts thus far on behalf of the city, discuss some key legislative issues, a little bit of ballot initiatives, budget items, and other funding opportunities. So recap of 23. In 2023, over 1,000 bills reached the governor's desk. 85% of those were signed into law, 15% were vetoed. And of that 1,000, a little over 1,000 number, that's probably roughly half of all of the bills introduced every single year. Somewhere around 2,500 bills get introduced in Sacramento. It's our job to sift through that, figure out what's relevant or important to the city of Turlock, to your guys' operations, to each department head. And then if there's anything that's a problem, then we address that and advocate otherwise. Though I will note, 2,500 bills can seem like a daunting number. Many of those bills will never actually move into anything. They kind of just are there, they're stagnant, and a lot of them won't actually apply to city operations. So I like to make that clear so that that number seems a little less daunting. Areas in 2023 with significant legislative focus included, for obvious reasons, the state budget. Last year, California was dealing with an over $30 billion, I think it was $32 billion state general fund deficit, largely due to less capital gains taxes. So spending was thrown off in addition to that because of the delays in the tax filing deadlines because of the crazy winter storms that happened last year. And they were actually, I think, 3 sets of delays. So the deadline was 8-9 months from when it was originally set. And this really, because of that deficit and then because of the delays, it threw off spending. And, Department of Finance, the administration, the legislature weren't able to accurately understand what they were spending on. It also stopped a lot of pieces of legislation that had a significant fiscal component attached to them. In terms of revenue and taxation, there was a lot of focus on these issue areas. Particularly, there were a couple of constitutional amendments that the legislature passed that will appear on the November statewide ballot dealing with revenue and taxation. And I'll get into that a little bit more later in my presentation. Housing and land use reforms. This has remained a constant in the state legislature for a number of years, largely, to encourage new growth, particularly in the affordable housing space throughout California. I've had a lot of conversations with folks in both the Senate and the Assembly, including the chief consultants of both housing committees, and they have all told me, they're like, we've kind of had enough of the land use and zoning reform bills. Yes, there's going to be some that come through, but ultimately the legislature kind of wants to give those new laws a chance to actually set in to see what's working versus what's not working. So it will be, I think, a nice little break in kind of the just massive influx of land use and housing reform bills that we've seen over the past probably 3 to 4 years. And then last year was really, really big on behavioral health, as many of you know, and also, its intertwinings with homelessness. The governor and the legislature really decided that they wanted to take that head on as their top priority. So as many of you know, they focused on pushing through the authorizing legislation to put what is now Prop 1 on the March 5th primary ballot. And I'll talk a little bit more about those authorizing pieces of legislation in a bit. And then fentanyl overdose prevention. The legislature convened a fentanyl overdose prevention task force. And so there was a lot that came out of that, some regarding public safety reforms, some regarding medicine for overdose prevention, and a number of other things. We're going to continue to see that as a trend this year, in addition to other public safety areas that I'll touch on. 2023 budget process, I already did discuss this a little bit, but it was a lot of uncertainty due to the deficit concern and the delayed taxes. We closed that $32 billion budget deficit and then set aside a good amount in reserves. So that's something that not a lot of people recognize, but that helps deal with the massive, even much larger and scarier budget deficit the state's facing this year. So 2024, what are we to expect? Of course, careful spending practices offset any lingering deficit impacts. really beefing up the reserve accounts to the amount they can, and then prudent spending. So in terms of like new programs, when I meet with budget committee and budget committee consultants, they're telling me, hey, if anyone has an idea, whether it's a bill or that's going to have, a major fiscal effect or any sort of new programs that we want to see implemented at a statewide level, now is not the year. What we're trying to do is preserve the really important things that protect the most vulnerable people and the most, most communities are relying on. And then cuts to and deferrals for existing programs, right? The past couple of budget cycles when we were actually in a surplus, the legislature and governor's administration decided that they wanted to invest a lot in climate and climate resiliency. So there were billions, tens of billions of dollars that went to the Natural Resources Agency for competitive grant programs for things like community climate resiliency. There was money that was going to Caltrans. There was things for like active transportation programs, and a lot of money going into these good competitive grant programs, but they were on out years. So now the governor's administration has had to decide, okay, this is actually money we're going to hold on or defer later or even claw back because we haven't spent it yet. We're in a bad deficit year. Now the question is, how do they close that? Or what do they do to kind of fill in that previously promised spending, right? The conversations I've had in the legislature and with the governor's office is largely they want to fill those gaps, their ideas with bonds. So the three bonds that they're talking about right now in Sacramento are a school facilities bond because they tried one a few years ago that didn't pass. So everyone is in agreement. The governor and both houses of the legislature both say that needs to happen. Housing bond and then climate bond. And the climate bond is really, really, really comprehensive. I had a call earlier today with the lead staffer for the climate bond in the assembly, and he was letting me know, he's like, yeah, right now we have a package that's probably worth about $12 billion. He's like, we're in a good place to push that through to cover those gaps that are going to, be created because the governor's pulling back the spending that was previously allocated. So ultimately, they feel they're in a good place, though, because that assembly bill that has that budget or that has that bond has a Senate companion. And ultimately, what's going to happen is they're going to reconcile the two. Leadership's going to meet. They're going to cut out the things that aren't in both, and then they're going to put something forward to the governor and try to get it on the November ballot for the voters to ultimately decide. All right, I'll go briefly through these. These were just a couple of the big picture bills from last year. ACA 1, having to do with revenue and taxation. What this does is it lowers the voter threshold to 55% from what was a 2/3 supermajority for bond or special taxes dedicated solely for either affordable housing or public infrastructure. Now, this is something that a jurisdiction can, they don't ever have to go out for a tax or a bond, but there was a lot of concern with some communities where they'd go out and then it'd be losing just under that 2/3 supermajority. And so the impetus why this author wanted this is this author came from local government. They saw that their communities needed, especially the public infrastructure. So, you've got aging sewer infrastructure, aging water infrastructure. If you ever needed to go out, what this does is it constitutionally said, okay, now it's 55%. So this is going to, though, appear on the November 2024 general election ballot. So the voters still are going to need to decide whether or not they want to implement this in the state constitution. This is also subject to cleanup legislation. So last year, it was like every single legislative year at the end, there's still negotiations that have to happen, but if they don't get it through, then they're not going to meet their timelines. So the author made a promise to another legislator in the Senate and said, all right, you have additional concerns around making sure there's a good accountability around this to protect the taxpayer, and also we want to narrow in on what the definition of public infrastructure is because it is a bit broad in the current text. So it's really a lot of accountability things, and so currently there's conversations and negotiations between the Senate and the Assembly on that cleanup vehicle that is then going to inform the initiative that ultimately goes on the November ballot. Behavioral health reform, as I discussed earlier, these are the two implementing bills that are authorizing Prop 1, which is on the ballot for March 5th. SB 326 by Senator Eggman, who's in the San Joaquin area, and AB 531 by Assemblymember Irwin, who's from Southern California. So 326 is the policy reforms around Mental Health Services Act, and then 531 authorizes billions of dollars in bonds. And you may have seen the commercials going out for Prop 1. So these were the pieces of legislation that actually authorized that. And obviously this was kind of the biggest push, quite frankly, for the governor and his administration last year. And the legislature was happy to go along with it. SB 43, also by Senator Eggman, she was really big on health reform. She was the chair of the Health Committee. It expands the definition of gravely disabled for the purposes of involuntary detaining to include a severe substance use disorder or mental health disorder. And this was signed by the governor into law. Really, the impetus of this is, and the author has spoken very candidly about it on the dais and in public forums, that she has family members who have struggled with behavioral health and substance use disorders, and a lot of other legislators have. So, there were some concerns, of course, around this bill when you hear things like involuntary detaining and things like that. Though ultimately it was the legislature's will, they decided, it's not something that they see as right for either the people that are out on the streets or the people that, there's a public safety hazard for. So they made this pretty landmark behavioral health reform bill law last year. And then the last state bill I wanted to touch on that passed last year is AB 1637 by Assemblymember Irwin. This requires cities and counties that maintain websites, which is everyone, to utilize a .gov or a .ca.gov domain by January 1st of 2029. There are a lot of still ongoing conversations about the implementation of this, and I'm certainly involved in those conversations, not only myself as your guys' individual lobbyists, but I know folks at the League of California Cities are also very involved in this, and we work really well with them. So we're all coordinating to just make sure this is something that's not going to be a massive burden, ideally, on the municipalities that have to implement, and make sure that folks that utilize the current city websites, there's not going to be a confusion, anything like that. And then we're also, of course, concerned about the fiscal, right? Because ultimately it's not just a website you change. When you have things on business cards, you have things on this, that, the other that's posted, physical copies, everything changes. So we're really just wanting to ensure that this isn't going to have a significant fiscal effect on the city, because that's the last thing we want. All right. Now talking about 2024, leadership changes. We have new leadership in both the Assembly and Senate. Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, he was sworn into office summer of last year, so he's been in there for a while, but still relatively new speaker. And then as of February 5th, we have a new Senate pro tem in Michael McGuire, and he is actually up from North and Healdsburg. So it's very, very interesting, I have to say, that we have a speaker who's from kind of rural Salinas County, and then a pro tem who's, from kind of a smaller community up north. That is not common. Typically you see a speaker and a pro tem that are from like in LA or San Francisco or something like this. So a lot of people are actually like, this is kind of a refreshing change, and someone who kind of understands, the little guy in the community. So with that though, it's not just the figureheads. They've made a number of changes to committee chairs, most notably new budget chairs. So in the Assembly, it's Assembly member Jesse Gabriel, who represents a district north of Los Angeles, parts of the San Fernando Valley, and further up than that as well. Senator Scott Wiener, who does represent San Francisco, he's the new Senate budget chair. And then both have been proponents. This is the nice thing. Both have been proponents in the past few years of the direct funding earmarks to cities, which, as you know, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, we've had some success for Turlock in getting direct money to the city for priority projects. Both of the new budget chairs have made it very clear that they are fans of that practice, to make sure that, legislators, whether it's a senator or an assembly member, can help get money direct to their district, because they know what's going on in their district. They know what needs funding. So that's actually a really positive thing about these two new budget chairs. In terms of our delegation, Senator Alvarado Gil remains the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee, and Assembly member Alanis remains the vice chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee. So we've got folks in really good places, which is really helpful to the city. Bless you. A little bit more looking forward, kind of big picture items that a lot of folks are going to be focused on. This is really sucking up all the air in Sacramento right now. State budget, of course, we're looking at a massive deficit. And I told you a little bit about how they plan to kind of cover that deficit in addition to spending cuts, deferrals. Yeah, it's going to be an ongoing negotiation, and we're going to continue to get information from the Franchise Tax Board and CDTFA and others and Department of Finance and figuring out what this is really looking like. And it's really going to be telling when the governor puts out his May revise. He did his January budget proposal. We saw that we were in a tough spot. The May revise is going to be more telling. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the budget process is like 24/7, 365. They have budget trailer bills. So if at one point, revenues start to uptick a little bit more, then there's going to be budget trailer bills or budget bill juniors that can tweak things to spend more, or vice versa. Statewide ballot initiatives, as I'd mentioned, Prop 1 on this primary ballot. ACA 13 and ACA 1 both potentially slated for the November general election ballot. And then, as I talked about, statewide bonds, climate bond, housing bond, school facilities bond. That's what everyone's focused on right now. Legislation, climate resiliency, more homelessness and behavioral health. Housing and greater access to housing is going to continue to be big for the legislature. And then this is what's really big right now: public safety, retail theft, some more on the fentanyl, but really, really, really a big focus on retail theft. It's become an issue that is no longer a partisan issue. It's really refreshing to see folks on both sides of the aisle working towards a lot of public safety reforms around retail theft. And I did have a memo that I shared with staff recently and the mayor, just listing out for now the multitude of public safety reform bills, and there's going to be more that are going to be gutted, amended, or introduced. So there's a lot out there, and a lot of positive momentum shifting in that way. And then as it relates to all sorts of legislation that comes through, as I mentioned, we capture those, we track and see what's actually significant to the city versus not. We'll check in with the mayor, the city manager, and relevant department heads to figure out, okay, is this going to implement your or is this going to affect your operations? Is this going to affect implementation of something you're working on? And then we can advocate accordingly. Now the fun stuff. State budget earmark funding that we have been successful in securing last year. So $435,000 direct state funding for parks and sewer infrastructure to the city of Turlock. Mayor Blue Black, City Manager Wilson, and staff came to Sacramento last year for an advocacy day to really help push for this, amongst a number of other things. So this was funding secured in partnership with Senator Alvarado Gil in the state budget. And I also think that there's an enormous amount of props that should be owed to city staff, particularly the finance director, Mr. Moreno, and staff, because they were really good about getting on this funding and implementing a funding agreement with the relevant state department in a timely manner. There are a number of cities who also got budget earmark funding who are now at risk of losing that funding, or at least having it delayed for, it could be a year, which really can put a damper in a project because their staff wasn't quick to act and secure funding agreements with the state department or agency that's allocating the dollars. So a lot of props to council, the mayor, city manager, and staff. You guys work as a cohesive unit, and because of that, you guys have money in the bank and other folks don't. So that's really, really important. Federal appropriations for the city. This is, the nature of DC. It's very slow. It takes a long time. But we do have 2 earmarks in the federal process right now that are drafted up in appropriations language. $1.2 million in direct funding for a sewer extension project, and another $1 million on top of that for a storm drain project. So Congress at this point, and they've been doing this for months, but they're negotiating on the top line spending agreements that are going to be written into an overall appropriations omnibus package. Are these at risk in that conversation? No. Everyone wants these because this is district priorities from your congressman that he has worked to get in there. And so ultimately, this is not something that's at risk. It's just a matter of those top line spending agreements coming into place, them shipping it off to the president, him signing the appropriations omnibus, and then this money then can come down and be passed through to the city. So this would bring our 2023 advocacy effort total to over $2.5 million in direct funding to the city. And again, just a huge amount of props to you all as council, the mayor, the city manager, his team, and then staff, because ultimately you guys are the ones that know your community, you know these projects, we are the voice that's there every day, but you guys are the ones that know how to frame things and fight for it. And so I just want to give props to you all as a city, because it's an integral part. It's a team effort to get these things done. And then the last thing I just want to touch on for 2024 funding efforts, again, state budget process. Even though we're in a deficit, my conversations with both budget chairs and their staff has been, hey, business as usual. We're going forward and going to try to push for direct budget earmarks. Always need to manage expectations, but it's something that they're doing. So we've been working over the past several months with city staff and the city manager and others in order to formulate those requests. So we've got 2 projects for water system infrastructure projects. We've got a fire department breathing apparatus request, and then traffic signal projects from engineering that we are all putting forward for both state budget requests as well as federal appropriations requests for this upcoming process. And then in terms of other funding opportunities, competitive grant applications. We've got our team working closely with your department heads and staff on a FEMA AFG application. Charging infrastructure for government fleets is one we're in discussions with staff on to continue to figure out if that's something we should go for. Portable medical and behavioral health care services funding, and then of course state and local cybersecurity grants. Cybersecurity is something that always continues to be more and more important, and this is kind of the first year where they've actually gotten some legitimate funding and a funding program to push forward cybersecurity grants. So that's fair to say, there's a lot on the plate right now. There's going to be more coming up. There's going to be more when it comes to legislation. But with that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the mayor or council. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Ramirez? Awesome. Bring us more money.
Love it. That's my job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe. All right. At this time, we will open public participation. You have 3 minutes. Milt?
Good evening, Milt Treeweiler. We have many things to be concerned about today. In today's world, we have to be careful about what we listen to and what we believe. There are too many people in the world who are dishonest, untrustworthy, and unethical. They live in a dream world. They worship money, power, and pleasure. There are people here in Turlock that are scheming to destroy the future for our descendants. Their plan is to build more houses to bring in Bay Area people to live in Turlock. Our city is surrounded by the best farmland in the world. Once you build on this farmland, we will never be able to grow food that we need to eat so we can survive. We know what we're doing. We would be destroying the prime farmland we need to grow food on. That would be irresponsible, and all our descendants would have to suffer for the bad decisions we're making today. Just as the pastor pointed out, we are educated people. We don't have to make bad decisions. There's not 1 acre of farmland in some entire states and even countries as good as the farmland north of Turlock. This farmland can grow food for hundreds and hundreds of years. We must preserve it so our children can have food to eat and can live happy lives. Let's do the right thing and preserve our prime farmland north of Turlock. I don't think some people realize how good the farmland is here. It's worth more than gold. You can't eat gold, but you can eat food. I just looked up something about Japan. Japan, 38%, only 38% of the food grown in Japan is grown in Japan. They have to import 62% of their food in Japan. We have plenty of room in our city. We can grow up. I've talked about growing up years and years now. This is my 10th year attending council meetings. We can grow up and not out. We can grow on the south side of our city where we have poor soils. Yes, we need to save our farmland for our sons and daughters, our nieces and nephews. Our descendants have to have food to eat. If the builders want to build houses, There is an abundance of poor soils in California for the developers to build houses on, like the Altamont Pass area, or the area west of Interstate 5, or the area east of Oakdale. We can also grow up and not out. Let us all work together to save our prime farmland for our children. Thank you.
Leslie?
Yep, I'm back.
Welcome.
Okay, let's get to it. What did we find out about 1619 Colorado?
We can't do question and answer.
Can't do
You can ask
that?
questions and we'll write them down and try and get back to you if you give us an email.
Yeah,
Okay.
you guys have my email, I do
Okay.
believe. I'm gonna need some answers on where we are on 1619. Okay, and then I don't like hearing from council that we don't know. Right? That's not a good answer. It's actually not an answer. So let's get the answers for this place. Now, I pulled out a bunch of information, which, you know, when I hear is I didn't know about it, I'm going to find out about it. So there are things that we can do by rezoning that area, right? We can rezone that area and make it safe for our kids. You agree? No, just going to sit there. So if we can rezone that area, we can make this area safe for our kids, and we can absolutely stop this 85-bed mental health facility. But you guys have to work together. This is not a one side versus the other side of the aisle, right? Let's make this happen, because what's happening right now is Turlock is going to become the dumping ground, right? If the county can just force y'all hands, then this is what is going to happen, right? So let's work together and let's get this done. I'm not going to apologize for last week because it was idiotic. I'm just going to tell y'all, let's do what we're supposed to do. I'm not playing. You're going to get used to my face, because every time you screw up, I'm going to be here. You understand? Y'all too. I'm going to be right here in your face. And if I have to, I'll be here during the day, knocking on your office doors. Now, I'm not playing. This stuff has to stop. The other thing is, I'm going to give you congratulations on trying to take more control over your city's businesses that enter the city, right? New businesses come in. I'm going to give you your props on that. But let's be smart about what we're doing. Do some research. That place, Alamo, has lost patients. They've turned up dead. Y'all want that on the streets of Turlock? Let's make this happen. They've lost patients. They got a girl out there right now. Nobody knows where the girl is. They don't even know where she is. And y'all going to allow this business to move into this city in the school zone.
Thank you. Kristan?
Good evening, Mayor Bublak and Council. Kristan Santos here again, representing the office of Congressman John Duarte. Our office was glad to recently welcome Corn Cream Corn Dogs with the Turlock Chamber of Commerce, and honored to join Turlock VFW Post 5059 for their awards dinner to recognize winners of the annual Voice of Democracy competition, as well as Officer of the Year, Officer Richard Furtado, Volunteer of the Year, Scott McCaskill, and Employee of the Year, Crime Prevention Specialist Melanie Sufcool. Congressman Duarte recently had the opportunity to meet with Golden Valley Health Centers, which operates multiple facilities here in Turlock, to discuss how to increase healthcare accessibility in the Central Valley. During that meeting, the Congressman was surprised, immensely grateful, and humbled to receive the Distinguished Community Health Center Advocate Award for 2024. Congressman Duarte is proud to have voted for the bipartisan Lower Cost, More Transparency Act. The 13th District is home to 6 federally funded, federally qualified health center organizations that operate 66 different delivery sites, serving nearly 459,000 patients. 1 in every 12 Americans and 1 in every 5 rural residents gets their primary care at a community health center. The Lower Cost, More Transparency Act authorizes more than $48 million and multi-year federal funding for these vital primary care centers to keep Valley patients out of crowded emergency rooms. The Act also requires all hospitals, clinical laboratories, imaging service providers, and ambulatory surgical centers that participate in Medicare to annually publish their prices and fees, including the discounted cash price and negotiated charges. By requiring nearly every corner of our health system to publicly disclose their prices, the Lower Cost, More Transparency Act empowers Valley patients and creates incentives to lower prices across the board. The Act also addresses the skyrocketing cost of prescription drugs. For years, pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, have charged payers like Medicaid more than they pay the pharmacy for a medication and kept the spread as profit. The Lower Cost, More Transparency Act finally bans abusive spread pricing by PBMs that participate in Medicaid. The Act also requires Medicare Part B to pay the same amount for physician-administered prescription drugs, whether provided in an off-campus hospital outpatient department or in an independent physician's office, saving Medicare and ultimately Turlock taxpayers nearly $4 billion over the course of 10 years. From co-sponsoring the Rural Hospital Technical Assistance Program Act to joining the Congressional Bipartisan Rural Health Caucus, Congressman Duarte will continue to be a fierce advocate for the priorities of Turlock patients and their families. Thank you for your time.
All right, anyone else who did not fill out a card? All right, let's not fight.
Hi. Good evening. Okay, just some thoughts that came to my mind here. I've asked this before for the Planning Commission meetings to be on video. I think that is important. I will, from the documentation that I got about the 1617 facility, back in 1981, I think it was, in that area there, the Planning Commission did several approvals so that they could expand their facility from 24 beds, I think it was originally, to the size it was now. Even though that area is zoned for residential low density, not high density. I think I'm getting my facts right. So the consequences of decisions made 40 years ago are coming back to us today. So I think it would be good if we could get the Planning Commission meetings on video. It is clear for me from comments that have been made at council meetings and watching a portion of the supervisors meeting today that we all live in bubbles and we're having trouble communicating with each other. Okay. People came here and they talked about the cost effectiveness of the day center compared to other methods, but they've missed the point, at least from my viewpoint. I believe the reason why the city of Turlock considered funding that effort was to reduce the impact of the homeless on the surrounding community, public safety, okay? And instead, we actually had the reverse impact, okay? But that doesn't seem to be understood by the supervisors, by La Familia, by some of the We Care board members, so on and so forth. I've tried to contact some of them to be able to talk with them and to try to convey some of this information, but I don't know if there's anything that can be done to better communication, but I think that would be helpful. And I guess I would welcome Gary Hampton. I don't know if he's here tonight, but you guys are, that's the next thing, so thank you.
Anyone else? Bob?
Over the last however many years I've been coming here, the subject of the homeless has been always in front of everybody. And members of the council have repeatedly said that this is a county problem. They need to do something. Now the county has stepped up and they're doing something. And I'm surprised that there aren't more downtown businesses who are here to fight for them to open up this facility in Colorado. If you don't open it there, where are you going to open it? Randall Manor, which is closed? Are you going to wait 5 to 7 years to purchase land and have them open it up somewhere else? Downtown may not last 5 to 7 years the way the homeless problem is. This could be opened up much sooner than that. And it's going to open up regardless, because I think the county's done everything they can to do it right. And if we try and fight it, all we're going to be wasting is money on an unwinnable situation. And money that's going to delay something that can help the homeless situation in Turlock. Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up.
I wasn't planning on talking tonight, but this is Go Green Week and everything like that. Well, to me, every week is Go Green. I don't have a particular day or week that I'm more green than the other. I'm green all the time. I guess that's what they call it. I don't. See, to me, being green is not wasting. I come from a family, my mother and everything, that waste was the worst and everything like that. You never came in and asked for a bottled water from my mother. I said, there's the faucet, go get a glass, fill it up. And but our infinite wisdom of our legislature about reusable bags. Did you all hear about that? Isn't that wonderful? I came in here and I told you, see, I can solve the problem tomorrow. You raise it to, instead of 10 cents a bag, 50 cents a bag, 75 cents a bag, $1 a bag, and guess what? Everybody would be reusing those every friggin' week. They wouldn't be throwing them away or anything else, and the problem is solved. The bags they made are beautiful bags. They are sturdy. They're meant to be reused for years and years and years. But they said, well, they're not recyclable. Well, the idea of being green is reusable, not just recyclable. I have a cup that I bought from one of the local fast food places. I've used hundreds of times. It's made out of plastic. So when I go anywhere and I can use that, I refill it and I don't use it. It's things. I've got jugs from backpacking from 30 years ago that I've used hundreds of times to refill and use. Reuse, 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 not just recycle. Thanks.
Anyone else? Come on up. Both of you.
Good evening. My name is Coralie Donkers, and I live off of East Avenue. Specifically, I live at 1578 East, and I'm here regarding the rezoning, VTSM 2022.
That'll be an item.
Deferred, okay.
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
wasn't sure. I
I'm
haven't.
sorry.
It's
That's
okay. I was prepared for that.
But we're
That was the
ready
case.
for you next time. Hold on.
Okay, cool.
Anyone else on just public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment and move on to motion waiving reading of all ordinances on the agenda except by title.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram? Yes. Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, and it passes with a 5-0. Okay, next item will be consent. Okay, next item is gonna be consent. One of the two items has been pulled, item B, boy, so, if there's not another to be pulled.
Move to approve item 5A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes with the 5-0. Item B, boy, all right, I guess Ms. Dami, if you'll just speak to it, please. No, it's just because it's not gonna get better. It'll be quicker this way.
Mayor, City Council, members of the public. My name is Jessie Domi. The item before you is approving a resolution to employ a CalPERS annuitant for the position of Interim Development Services Director pursuant to CalPERS requirements.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah.
All right, any questions of Director Domi?
I suppose for the public, could you explain a little bit of the process of how a CalPERS annuitant comes to this position and how this comes before us?
Absolutely. So the position came before us, direction of city manager's request to fill the position as an interim development services director and, a retired annuitant. And so we do two things in human relations. One is we reach out to CalPERS and make sure that we are following the government code regulations in regards to vacant positions. And this includes making sure that the position's in active recruitment, that there's a limited duration of work and a single appointment, and the compensation's within the salary scale of the current vacancy.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll open it to public. Milt?
Milt Treeweiler. Yes, I requested this item be pulled because I wanted to point out something. And what I wanted to point out is, since I've attended meetings now for 10 years, let's go back to October 13th, 2015, A through Q. There were that many items on the consent calendar. On March 28th, 2017, it was A through O. On November 12th, 2019, these are just agendas I pulled out of my files randomly. November 12th, 2019, it was A through X. On April 13th, 2021, it was A through H. On October 11th, 2022, it was A through L. And last year, we had January 24th, 2023, it was A through K, which was 11 items. August 8th, 2023, we had A through I, which was 9 items. And now we go into 2024. January 9th, our first meeting, A through B. We had 2 items on the consent calendar. January 23rd, 24, we had A through D. We had 4 items on the consent calendar. February 13th, our last meeting, we had A through J, 10 items on the consent calendar. And tonight, we have 2 items on the consent calendar. So my question is going to be to the city attorney and the city manager as to what happened to our consent items. I saw a red flag there because we're having a reasonable number of consent items and suddenly we don't have any at all or just 2. Obviously the budget's on everyone, so that means we're only having 1 consent item per meeting. And this is a red flag to me. What are we covering up? How come we've lost all these consent items that have been on the consent agenda?
Mr. Treeweiler, can you bring it around to the B item, specifically B, please?
Well, I respect Mr. Hampton. I think he's a fine person, but I don't think he's qualified for all the positions that he's been applying for. He's been doing different positions throughout the last 5 years, and it's wonderful that he can do it, but I'm just kind of curious as to why he's here. And I'll speak with the attorney and the city manager after the meeting. I'll be here to talk about why we're only having 2 items per consent calendar. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, let's close the public comment, bring it back.
Motion to approve 5B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram? Yes. Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, pass with 5-0. Thank you, Director Domi. And welcome, Mr. Hampton. Item 6 is final reading, second final reading of an ordinance for the TMC. I'll open it to the public. I will close public comment and bring it back.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes with a 5-0. All right, this public hearing 7A. This is appeal affirming the planning commission decision, and Ms. Warner first? Yes? Okay, thank you.
I have a question before we begin. We have
Yeah,
the
I'm
green
sorry,
sheet.
the
Are we
green
good?
sheet, I appreciate that. So, the green sheet, if we could, real quickly, just, if there is questions, Mr. Petrolakis, do you want to speak to judicial?
Yeah, the appeal of the variance denial is what's called an adjudicatory or a quasi judicial act, which means you're acting in kind of the capacity of a judge-like capacity where you're applying law to a set of facts. And so in that case, the city, like you're not supposed to communicate with the judge in a trial. What's called an ex parte communication is when a party to the matter contacts you as decision makers. And basically, we have this simple requirement that if those contacts are made, that they just be disclosed. I mean, they're fine to do, we just disclose it when they are done. So if any of you have met with anybody involved in the variance, that's what that's about.
So if we have, then we should say it right now?
Yes.
Okay, anybody?
Yes, I received a request for a meeting on February 10th with the applicant, Mr. Leoniak. We met on the 19th in person. He shared the history of the structure, kind of what has led to this variance, and shared some of the documents that are in our agenda packet tonight. And I do not believe that meeting will affect my ability to be impartial in this.
Anyone else?
Yes, I met with Mr. Leoniak too. I don't remember the date exactly, but it was basically the same thing to hear where he was with things and what, I guess, to help me understand what his requests are. And I basically directed him to Mr. Petrolakis to see what his options are.
Anybody else? Okay, Ms. Warner,
Okay,
thank you.
all right, thank you. Good evening, council members, Mayor Bublak, and members of the public. The item tonight before you is an appeal of the Planning Commission's December 7th decision denying variance 2023-01 at 2560 and 2562 Mooneyham Court. The variance is the variance is in relation to a property of where the Red Star is in the Mooneyham Estate subdivision. The variance was to allow an existing 10 by 10, 13.5-foot tall accessory structure to remain at its current location of 20 inches from the rear property line and 33 inches from the side property line. So this is a depiction of the backyard that Mr. Leoniak had provided the planning department when he applied for the variance. The underlying general plan
Can
designation.
you hold on just a second for me, please? Okay, go ahead, thank you.
The underlying planning designation for the property is a very low-density residential, which in that zoning district allows for larger lot sizes. The minimum lot size is 14,500 square feet, and larger setbacks. So our typical low-density residential or typical single-family homes are typically 5,000 square feet with 5-foot setbacks on the side and 10-foot in the rear. For the residential estate or the very low-density residential, they have larger setbacks, which are typically 20 feet from the rear and 30 feet in the front and 10 feet on the sides. So the request for the variance, is in response to an August 1st, 2022 complaint that we received in the building department regarding the structure, and that there was electrical in the structure, and that it was too close to the property lines. So we started the code enforcement process. Our code enforcement process we're complaint-based. We don't go out and look for violations. If we do receive a complaint, then we do follow up and try to investigate to make sure that it was valid. So this is a timeline, and it is in your packet, of of our complaint timeline that we did receive the complaint in 2022. And we reached out to Mr. Leoniak. He was in contact with the building department regarding the building permit he was trying to submit, and we did reach out to him. And we had some discussions with him in November 22 about the variance process and what the regulations were for the setbacks. We made staff made a site visit and verified that the structure was still there and still remained in that location. Mr. Leoniak contacted us in June and explained why they had constructed the tea house. And again, he had provided us drone pictures of where it was prior to him. It was a shed prior to him building the tea house in that location. But we did just kind of go over the setbacks and reiterated what the setbacks for that zoning district were, and that based on those drone pictures, that the structure that he had did not meet those setbacks. We did meet with Mr. Leoniak in person. I believe a member of the building staff and I met with him just prior to him submitting the application for the variance. And we received that application for the variance in October of 2023. And so then the Planning Commission did hear the variance on December 7th and denied the variance to allow the structure to stay there in that same location. The city clerk received an appeal on December 18th for Mr. Leoniak to appeal to the city council to deny the Planning Commission's decision. So accessory buildings and structures are legislated by our municipal code. The accessory buildings and structures for, as I said, for a typical single-family lot, they do have smaller setbacks. A smaller structure in the residential, low-density residential zoning district could be 5 feet from the property line, and 5 feet from the rear property line, 5 feet from the side. However, when the Planning Commission, and we had gone through several updates in our municipal code, probably about 10 years ago, then they looked at the requirements under the residential estate. They chose not to reduce those setbacks. They are reduced from the house setbacks of 20 feet from the rear and 10 feet from the side, but they didn't go as close as the 5 foot. And that was to still speak to the reason why the larger lots have bigger setbacks, and to maintain that light air and the feel of transitioning from our rural, like Denier in our rural area, into a more highly dense residential area. So as you move from the east side of Turlock, kind of along the buffer where Denier is, we have larger lots, and as you move further into town, they get smaller. And that's what these residential estate lots are to do. They're supposed to give us that transition from rural into a more dense urban area. So that is the reason for the larger setbacks on that residential estate lot. So again, the this site plan shows that the structure is 20 inches from the rear property line and 30 inches from the side property line. I may have gotten that wrong. 33 inches from the side property line. We did receive there are several building permits as he submitted the request for variance. We pulled various building permits because he had indicated that there was a plan for a building permit for the shed that was there previously. Our records did not show a building permit for the shed that was previously there, as well as it's designated in this picture here. That's not necessarily unusual. If the shed is under 120 square feet, it doesn't have electrical or plumbing, it wouldn't require a building permit. So without having the building permit requirement, it's not always, it would still have to maintain the setbacks, but it's not always, we're not always able to verify it because there's no permit to verify it with. In this picture, we can see that the shed that was there previously to the tea house is in the corner in the similar location as the tea house is now, but we can't verify how tall it was or the size of it or really the distance to the setbacks as, from the drone picture. So here is the building permit that we received in 2021. It was for a replaster of the existing pool. And the pool, the plans that we received do show the shed in the back, but it doesn't show any other structures or any other features that are currently on the property that Mr. Leoniak has installed since then. So we did see that the shed is there. The permit is strictly for the replaster of the pool. That's what our building inspectors went out to inspect. They would not have inspected the shed because there was no reason to inspect the shed. It was not part of the building permit. So the additional features at the time of the building permit the plastering permit had been closed out. There are planters, wall planters, a deck, a wooden pathway, and you can see up in the right hand, up in the little triangle area where the tea house sits now. So at the planning commission, the planning commissioners would have had to make the variance findings, and these are the variance findings that they would have had to make. That there's an exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that apply to the property or the intended use. That due to the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that we could not literally enforce the provisions of the municipal code, and that the variance is necessary to preserve or substantial property right of the property owner. And that granting the variance would not be materially detrimental to the public or welfare, and that granting the variance would not constitute a special privilege consistent with the limitations on other properties, and as well as granting a variance would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the provisions of the chapter and the general plan. So as just going to the first finding, the property does meet the requirements of that zoning district as far as the residential estate minimum lot size is 14,500 square feet. The property that where the variance is requested does meet that. It's 14,526 square feet. It meets the minimum lot width and minimum lot depth. So out of that, there's no extraordinary implications from their lot size or lot width. They meet and actually exceed the minimum standards. So this is just the map from the county assessor where you can see the size of the lot and the dimensions that just confirm that it does meet the minimum standards in the zoning district. So there are two residences on the lot. One of them was, they were both built around the same time in 2004. One was built as the main house, and the second one was more, at that time, what we called a second dwelling. And we call them accessory dwelling units now, but they were both built around the same time. So back to the variance findings, looking at the first finding that the planning commission had to make, and I detailed here that how the property does meet those standards, that there are no exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that would not allow us to enforce. There are options for the structure. It could be lowered to not exceed 7 feet in height. In our ordinance, anything that's less than 7 feet in height can be within those setbacks. It could possibly be relocated to meet those minimum setbacks elsewhere on the property. But there are options for it to meet the zoning district standards. So there's nothing extraordinary or circumstances that would not allow the structure to meet the zoning district standards. The other finding for meeting it is that it's necessary for the preservation of substantial property right possessed on other properties of the same district. As I said before, that it does it can be reduced to meet those standards. It can be moved elsewhere on the property. So it doesn't preclude the property owner from any type of property rights for developing his property. That granting the variance would be detrimental to the public and welfare. The setbacks are maintained to allow for light, air, open space for properties, not only your property, but as well as the surrounding properties. So allowing a structure to just be 20 inches and 33 inches from the property lines does impact the surrounding properties by having a large structure that impedes on that light, air, and space. So that's one of the reasons why the Planning Commission felt that they could not make the finding on this one as well. So granting the variance would constitute a special privilege. It would grant a special privilege to this property that's not, would not be allowed on a property that's zoned residential estate, nor would we allow it on a property that would be zoned low-density residential, because they would have to maintain a minimum of a 5-foot setback. And granting the variance would be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the TMC and the general plan, which it would not. It does impede on that light, air, and space, and privacy on the other properties. So it does not meet those standards and those findings as well. So just in conclusion, the variance is an exception to the established rules. The tea house is 13.5 feet tall. It's 20 inches from the rear property line and 33 inches from the side property line. And allowing the tea house to remain in its current location does grant a special privilege to that property and that the surrounding area and other residential lots would not be able to enjoy. So with that, I take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Warren? Yeah, a couple. Can the tea house be feasibly moved? Is it on a slab? There's space there on the lot, obviously, but they're gonna have to take it all the way down, re-pour the slab, rebuild.
Yes.
It's got electrical in it, so it should really have a permit, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then the options that the owner would have would be to either move it, take it all the way out, or resize the height?
Yes, if you brought it down to 7 feet, the municipal code says within that 7 feet,
But with the electrical, it would still
it
meet
would still
permit.
require a permit because of the electrical, yes.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I have a question. You alluded to the complaint that started all of this. Are you able to share what the sort of harm that the complaining party is saying, or is it all kind of under the light space and whatnot?
It was the size of the structure being as close to the property, to their fence line. They were concerned with the noise or activity that was going on out in the tea house, that they could hear that in their backyard. So the main complaint was that the structure was too close to the property line and that they had electrical in it.
And I was just trying to understand from the staff report, a structure that's this tall and of this size would need to be 10 feet back from the side and back, but also 6 feet from the housing structure that's there. Is that correct, or what am I missing?
So for the building code, any structure would need to be a minimum of 6 feet from the house. Then it would have other construction materials that they would have to maintain in order for fire issues. Not that it couldn't be closer, couldn't be at 6 feet, but it would just be the construction materials for fire safety. But yes, it would have to they could move it out of the 10 feet. If they lowered it to the 7 feet, then the municipal code says that it could stay there. But yes.
And one final question. You highlight how our municipal code has either a 10-foot setback or a 5-foot setback. Are there structures such as like accessory dwelling units that are allowed to be within, a lesser setback than that? I understand that this is about a tea shed, but I feel like it's germane to the conversation to understand what other structures are allowed to do, especially when we're talking about special privileges or other, what other properties are able to do.
So as far as what, in our municipal code, the setbacks, the 5-foot setbacks in the typical residential district are the regulations for our city, as well as the 10-foot. Those are regulations for our cities. Other jurisdictions have different regulations for their jurisdiction. Accessory dwelling units, state law came down with new laws a couple of years ago that any new accessory dwelling unit can be built in that 4-foot, maintain a 4-foot setback from the side and rear property line. But that's from state law. So they usurped our law based on for an accessory dwelling unit, not, that's an additional living unit, not a, different thing.
But it's 4 foot for that type of thing.
For an accessory
Got
dwelling
it.
unit, yes.
Any other questions of Ms. Warner? Okay, then we will invite the applicant up at this point.
Good evening, Your Honor, everyone else from the City Council. John Leoniak, the applicant, in question. Apologies. So originally when we had met with well, first off, I know I got 10 minutes, so I'm gonna probably speak a little bit quick. But the opening prayer by the Chaplain Pastor, great selling pitch to this community. And actually, that's what brought us to this community in 2014, when we were recruited from New York City to come out here as my wife is the only infectious disease specialist in this community. Big selling point, coming from 12 million people to 77,000 people, sensitive community, dwelling, getting to know everybody. So we made a decision to come out. We have our own private practice out here. And, we really got that sense of the community in around 2018 when my son had drowned in our backyard in our pool. Whole community came together. Everyone in our neighborhood came together. First responders, shut down the whole Emmanuel Medical Center when my son was brought in, and then later air flown down. Anyway, fast forward, pandemic hits. My wife being the only infectious disease specialist at the community, our lives got turned upside down. Anyone who is in healthcare or first responders can know, especially during that period of time, just how chaotic it really was. And especially when you're the only individual in the community, when everyone just turns right to you, says, what do we do, right? This is something new, we've never experienced it before. You're the resident expert, help us, right? And so for 3 years, it was just it was FUBAR. For anyone who doesn't understand an acronym, look it up. Anyway, living what we were going through and understanding what everything was going through, we needed a space that she could actually just go to after hours. Not even after hours, because there was no after hours. It was 24/7, 365 for 3 years, right? She needed a Zen area, a place just to be able to unwind and be able to think from the day-to-day activities of people pleading to save her life, life and limb, just everything that was going through. So we took the opportunity to renovate the backyard because, like everyone else, we were not going anywhere. And at a substantial cost, there was an existing structure on the property which we purchased, and it was a pool house, pool structure, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it was much greater than 7 feet. It was much greater than 150 square feet. Had power, had plumbing into it. It was where all the electrical pool equipment was currently housed, with some other bath fixtures as well too. It's on a slab of concrete that was about 16 by 20 feet. It was a permanent structure. It was there. No one questioned whether or not that structure wasn't permanent or not. It was never brought up in any discussions between a real estate agent or the closing title. Anyway, fast forward, decided to renovate at the time, take the opportunity, build something for my wife, right? To be able just to go in and unwind, place of solitude. And fast forward about another 1.5 years later, we get the complaint letter from the city. Originally, we thought it was for the electricity. So I sent our electrician down to put the permit into the office. Comes back and says they kicked it back. I make a phone call. At that time, I was speaking with Katie Quintiero, I believe her name was, about everything that we needed to do. Super nice. Everyone in the building department was really super nice and helpful. Later on, I got passed on down to Adrian and her department. Again, making multiple phone calls, trying to figure out, what's going on, right? Put yourself in my shoes, homeowner, buy this house, come to find out we got a structure that doesn't have a permit, right? Especially when we just dropped almost $200,000 renovating the backyard. The structure is a substantial structure, all right? No question asked about it. And in about 2 seconds, I'll share some packet and information with you if you haven't seen the structure already. Anyway, a complaint goes through, we try to respond, we want to make it right? Pillars of the community, don't want to piss anybody off, make everybody happy, make nice. Go through the process, trying to understand what went wrong, how it went wrong, trying to hopefully understand. It says, look, at the end of the day, if we got to file the variance, let's file the variance, right? Let's just make it happen. Then I hand in the paperwork and basically told at that point that they were going to deny the variance. Like, okay, at least I'll get in front of the commission, plead my case, plead humanity, right? To the community, right? This is what we were sold on, right? This is a good Christian community. Community takes care of each other. That fell through, right? Commission came back and denied the variance. Okay, appeal the process. So I went back and I started doing some more research. And during my research, I discovered some new things, new information that came to light. Now, this is where I'm going to take my time real quick and speed this up because I got about 4 minutes to go through, put some packets together, and I apologize, I probably don't have enough for everybody.
We could share.
Which way?
We'll share your.
Oh, we'll share. Okay. Give the attorney one. Anyone else?
We're good.
I got 2 more available if anyone else needs them. Anyway, in the packet, I'll just go chronologically real quick. So as you can see, the first picture circled, apologies, is this is the structure that we currently have in place in Google Maps overview. As you can see, everyone's saying that we can move this structure. By this, I mean, this picture alone says there's nowhere on this piece of property that this structure can be moved. All right, next question, next photo, you can see the tea house is a substantial structure. All right, it's not, nobody lives in it. It's not an accessory dwelling unit. All right, it's just basically, for better lack of words, a place to go in and chill out, right? To unwind from the day-to-day. You can actually see on top, on one of the second structures, the electricity that's in there is just a ceiling fan with a light. That is it. There's no TV. There's nothing else in there. And that's just for airflow. All right. Next photo, a little bit more. Here's a clear shot of the photo with the back wall, about some odd inches. And you can see, again, the wall is 6 feet tall. No one in my family is over 6 feet tall. There's nobody looking over that wall. All right. I got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to speed up. Now, as Ms. Werner pointed out in the photo, all right, that was a photo that she said that we had delivered to her, which is true, we did. All right, and I actually circled it here too, drone overview shot. However, in the same packet that was delivered to her, there were other photos, and you just heard her yet again state that they couldn't tell the size of the structure that was existing there. But in the last 3 photos, you can clearly see the same packet that was delivered at the same time, that for some reason those photos were left out in the presentation. You can clearly see that that structure is much greater than 7 feet tall. It's a pitched roof, double door, and that wall on this side is up to 6 feet. It's a standard block wall. All right, and these photos were provided to the Planning Commission at the same exact time. No other photos were delivered. All right, and again, there's another photo. At the end of the day, I got 2 minutes left, so I apologize. Same photo, you can clearly see this structure is much greater than 7 feet tall, much greater than 100 and some odd square feet. Had power, had plumbing in it. Right? That was my argument initially. Right? When we purchased this property. Then, after multiple correspondence after the Planning Commission, trying to figure out, we knew there was a property within our neighborhood that had got a permit for a pool house. Right? And the question was, how did they get a permit and we didn't? Right? And then during the Planning Commission, one of the commissioners actually asked Ms. Werner, that he said that before he came in, He looked around Google Maps and he said, almost every house in our neighborhood has an accessory structure. Her response was, as she just yet said again, in the business of responding to complaints, not enforcing. Cool. At that time, did a little bit more digging. Come to find out, when I went and pulled permits for my dwelling, I have actually in the first 3 permits that are in your file, all right, 2560, 2562. 2560, the first permit is a 4-bedroom, 1-car garage, recreation room and covered patio, 259 square feet approximate. But the house don't have a recreation room, don't have a covered patio. Maybe that is the permit for the pool house that so quote unquote doesn't exist. Second page of the permit, if they would actually pull the permit and look, they would have read CPT okay, main line running through the pool house, pre-test, good to go. Main house is my dwelling, the 4,000 square foot dwelling. The only electricity that shares to the accessory structure in question is the pool lights and the outlet from my main house back to the pool house. Now, I also want to point out, I got 10 seconds, the date, 04, all right? Second set of permits, 2560, all right? 2560, no, that's the second one, I'm sorry, 2561. I'm missing one. Anyway, there's a 2562 one that shows right on there, pool house, pool bath. So yet again, if you look at the date, 04, it's showing that there's a pool house, pool bath. Next set of instructions, 2 years later, is the original pool that went in, permit-wise. All right, and now it's in 06. And yet it shows again, there's electricity that is tested back to the pool house. Now, talking to 3 different developers, it was brought to attention that the individual who purchased or built the house, the dwelling, pre-plumbed for the pool beforehand, 2 years prior, because both the dwellings are built at the same exact time, concrete poured at the same exact time, electricity ran at the same exact time. All right? Snapshot 2 years ahead, pool goes in, electrician or the inspector comes out, signs off on the electricity. It's there. Now, the other question that was brought up when she said no other dwelling in our
Sir,
neighborhood.
can you like 1 or 2 sentences? I
Sure,
know you have a
here
time.
go. At the end of the packet, every single house in our neighborhood has an accessory structure on it, has a permit for it.
Okay.
Multiple years after the original structure went in. She had brought up that said that no other dwelling in our neighborhood that has to be within a 10-foot setback requirement could get a permit. Yeah, every single one of them actually has them. And even the house, the Mooneyham Estate, that zoned those properties, guess what? Got a permit 2 years after, whatever, for an accessory structure. So it's fair to say that the structure that was there had a permit.
Okay.
End of story.
Okay.
So, and yes, oh, and by the way, real quick, I did speak with I met with Katie Montiero after she had resigned, and she confirmed that those 3 permits that are in the packet are indeed the permits for the pool house.
Okay. All right. Well, opening it to the public. Is there anyone speaking? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Janine Belheis, 2200 Swan Park. And I just wanted to point out and share a picture with you, a couple of things. This tea house jacuzzi structure, their roof line is actually on the fence line. Can I share that with you?
Just hand it to our clerk if you don't mind. They'll pass it
Okay.
around.
Kind of see. Yeah, so that's not really whatever the setback is. Also, he replaced the fence, and he replaced it with a cinder block fence. The existing fence that used to be there, it was higher, which gave us more privacy. Can I share that also? That's the old fence. Okay. There's one more. And it's actually a little bit higher than what it says in the, it shows a plan of how high the tea house is, but it's on a raised platform, so add 6 inches to it. The structure, it has dark windows all the way around the perimeter that look right in our backyard. It's an invasion of privacy. We did not have that before. Whatever structure was there, We didn't even notice it before with the old fence. So, this doesn't seem right. Everyone should know, especially if you're educated, that there are setbacks, there are rules to follow. We followed them when we built our house. I wish everybody else would too. Let's see what else. Yeah, here's one more. Okay. Let's see, give me 1 second. Yeah, I think that should. That's basically what I would say. It's just, I feel it's an invasion of privacy, and, I mean, when the roof line's overhanging on your side of the fence, I think it's a little too close. That's it, thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? You'll get to wrap up after, sir.
I guess my only question was, number one, anybody's complaining about it, are we sure that they're the registered owners of the properties? Secondly is, I know there are other pool houses, tea houses, whatever, in Turlock that were built and allowed in a similar fashion. And I think that if you go around and all the neighbors are registered owners, are not upset about it, that I think you should be allowed to have a variance. Thank you.
Anyone else? Terry?
Admittedly, I don't know a lot about these things, but it seems to me that if the fence were rebuilt as an 8-foot fence, that might give her the privacy she needs and solve the problem.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ron?
Well, first, thanks to the city attorney for putting in the ex parte communications stuff. You know that that was a particular thing of mine. Also, I think that they're supposed to be told that they're not supposed to, the council members are not supposed to do their own investigations. And if they did, then they should present that information before any decision is made. This is kind of sad. I kind of see this as a dispute between two neighbors that I wish they had worked it out between themselves. It kind of seems petty to me. It seems to be that there should be easy solutions for this. It also kind of ticks me off that we had to spend all the staff time that we had to, which was a significant amount of staff time. And I wanted to compliment you on your presentation with all the detail that you had in there. You know, there's other things that they need to be working on. I noticed in the staff report, it talked about one resident who lived next door at the planning commission meeting, that one resident who lived next door spoke in favor of leaving the tea house where it is. Another resident spoke against granting the variance, stating other homeowners would want variances for their structures. So I was a little, why would that be a concern unless you were planning on filing complaints on a whole bunch of people in that neighborhood? So the planning commission has to follow the rules laid out in, this is my understanding, in the city ordinances. They can't say, oh, I think you're a good person, you know, it's bad circumstances, so we'll let you go. The planning commission has to do that. One of my questions would be, are the five of you bound by that same limitation? and at least from the pictures that I saw, the property next door also had a large structure, pergola, I believe, that was close to the fence. The other property, it was trees. And when they talked about noise, hearing noise and someone in the tea house, well, there's also the pool. So, I mean, if you use the pool, you'd hear noise there. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, the applicant, you have 5 minutes at the end.
Appreciate the opportunity to re-speak. So.
Can you bring it over a little bit to hear?
Oh,
Thank you.
Thanks. So everyone's talking about requiring a variance. Don't need a variance because the original structure had a permit. All right, we showed multiple permits that showed the pool house. It was already there. It was signed off on. It was approved. I'm actually up here because I'm requesting my $3,100 back for filing a variance application fee when I didn't have to file a variance application fee. Because at the end of the day, the structure, the existing structure that was there, that was renovated, had a permit for it. All right. As far as getting the electrical permit for it, that's a non-issue, right? It's just go down and get the permit for that. No issues with that whatsoever. As far as another resident brought up, one of the issues that I see in the planning department is that a complaint was able to come in from a non-resident of this community, and that's what just blows me away. Now, I got 4 minutes. I don't really want to go into the back and forth of why this complaint really came in. All right, I know why it came in. Regardless, the individual that was just up here speaking is actually not the resident of that actually dwelling. She's the daughter who actually lives from Newport Beach. And there is some history there, but again, I'm getting looped into something that's a family drama, and I'm just ultimately paying the price for it. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because the existing structure had the permit for it. It's not infringing on anyone's privacy. We share the same landscaper. All right, he's had multiple conversations with the resident. They've planted new bushings or new bushes and trees. The only reason why that came about was because when they cleared out the back wall, all the overhanging the trash and the garbage and from the trees, next thing you know, they see this structure there. Simple solution was to put new planting in there to cover it up, which they did, and which the homeowner agreed to. End of story. So at the end of the day, I would just like to get a refund for my $3,100 for an application fee that I feel I didn't have to file because we uncovered that the structure there did have the permits for it. And as far as infringing on the property line, on the block wall, it's a few inches off the block wall. And there's nothing I could do about it. The existing structure that was already there, believe it or not, the roof line overhung on the other property line and onto the fence. And one of the reasons why that fence had to get replaced at my cost, which unfortunately the daughter didn't divulge, was even though the state law mandates that multiple, the dwellings split the cost, but I absorbed the cost of putting up that block wall. It was unsafe. The fence kept on coming down into the structure, and it kept on breaking down the structure. All right. But anyway, that's, as one of the other residents, it's a petty argument. And unfortunately, we're here wasting each other's time. And, I do apologize to Ms. Winter and her department because ultimately, at the end of the day, she did waste a lot of time trying to research this at the end of the day when she didn't have to, when the permits were already there, an existing structure, and the complaint came in. My only suggestion to the city is that maybe, when a complaint does come in, it's a valid complaint. They validate the complaint before they even take it to the next level. Maybe to determine, hey, this person who did file this complaint is actually a resident of the community. Because then at that point, anyone from anywhere in the state can file a complaint, and by law, they're bound to follow up, which is to me a gross waste of their time, and anyone's time, to be perfectly honest. So, with that said, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to close the public comment and bring it back. Ms. Warner, how do we determine what qualifying exemptions are for the permits that have already been in that area? How do we know what our standard is?
So if you're asking other permits for accessory structures in the, right, so the only way for us to know would be to have addresses of those existing properties and to research what building permits are on those properties. So if, you know, as I believe Mr. Bridegroom pointed out, that there are other properties in the area that potentially have or do have accessory structures on them, sheds, pergolas, gazebos. We wouldn't know if they were there unless we know the address and can do the research to find out whether or not they have permits. If the structure is less than 120 square feet, doesn't have plumbing or electrical in it, it would not require a building permit. But it still has to maintain the setbacks from the property lines.
Other questions of Ms. Warner?
Just to be clear, this is when we're talking about the tea house, this is a new structure. It was not a rebuild of the former structure?
Correct.
So it's a brand new structure that was built. They tore down the old structure, built the new structure.
Yes.
Okay. And then clarifying on a fence, it's my understanding that anything over 7 foot has to be engineered and would require a permit to be over that 7 foot.
Only if it's a masonry wall. If it was a 7.
So this one, if it was higher, would need to have engineering done and a special permit.
Correct. A fence and a wall in the city limits in your backyard can't exceed the 7 feet.
Right.
Unless it was for acoustical reasons, and then we would require an acoustical analysis for that.
All right, thank you.
Going back to her question about it's a new structure, how do we know?
Based on the plans that we received, the pool plans where they originally showed, I believe it was permit 21, when the replastering of the pool, which was the permit in 2021, they showed a site plan where the shed was. They did not show any of the other structures or features that are in the yard. As Mr. Leoniak said, he did renovate the backyard. So they didn't show any of those structures during that, when they applied for that replaster of the pool. One of the things that we do ask in the building department is that you need to show us the existing situation on site now. So we need to see those structures. Not that we're necessarily pulling permits from, but we need to see so that when we go out, we know what's out there.
Other questions or comments?
Well, I mean, he is under the impression that he did have a permit.
Yes.
And I mean, is that something for the city attorney to decide if that was
So the
true or
permit
not?
the permit that Mr. Leoniak is referring to, it does say 2-bedroom, 2-car garage, pool room, covered patio, and pool bath. It is for the second structure, and it's a 14,000, it was the garage, the porch, and the patio, which comes up to approximately 2,450 square feet. It is not for the shed. It is not for the structure there. It was for the house because the two homes were being built at the same time. It was distinguishing between those two houses, not the shed or this structure.
all done under one permit?
No, they were done on 2 permits. The two dwellings were done on 2 permits.
Comments.
Yeah.
First of all, the structure looks amazing. It really does. It's a very beautiful structure. With that said, we have codes for a reason, and we do need to honor our building codes. We need to honor our planning commission. Codes are there for safety, and they're there to guarantee the enjoyment for all properties, not just one property, but all the surrounding properties. It's a hard situation. It really is. It's a beautiful structure, but this is a new structure. It was not a rebuild, and because it has electrical, it needed a permit. It wouldn't have been given a permit had one been sought.
I have a question for Mr. Petrolakis, to echo a question Mr. Bridegroom had. In the part of the municipal code that has items A through F that are to be considered for a variance, are we to consider each of those and they sort of build upon each other, or how, do you have any advice on guiding the decisions here?
Well, councils can, this is a de novo review from the commission, right? The appeal of the denial. So give me an example, maybe that would help me. Not good at-
Well, I mean, my understanding of the municipal code there, let me pull it back up. 95616, it says the planning commission determined that the following findings are established beyond reasonable doubt. The criteria there, so the planning commission was to.
Does the code say you must
Yep.
find each one, or does it, say you shall find each one? Or does it say you must consider each one? Shall.
Shall find.
Yeah, so shall mandatory, so you'd have to find all of them technically to.
That's not our directive, though.
That's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah.
That's not our directive. Okay. Well, then I will move into a comment. In my research and again, in the spirit of transparency, the only investigation I did was looking at Google Maps and, looking through the municipal code that referenced this and talking to staff about it. So, I have a little bit of concern with saying that item F, that this is consistent with our general plan. Obviously, 10 feet is what it says, but the staff report talks about the spirit of the residential estate zoning as to be a transition from more dense to more rural. Whereas in the years after this was built, there's been considerable development to the east of that in the more higher density residential that has a 5-foot setback. So I would like to entertain the idea of having a 5-foot setback to make it at least consistent with what the other residences in the city of Turlock have to comply with.
It's not that simple.
Well, that's not this item. They're 33 inches from one fence and 20 inches from another. That's very close.
Yeah, but in fairness, we are offered 3 different resolutions here to consider, and one would be not at all, one would be 10 feet, or 5 feet, and one would be just as is. So I'm saying to my colleagues here that I would consider a 5-foot if anyone would like to discuss that.
Well, honestly, I'd rather have the applicant, the neighbor, and our attorney step aside and see if there is some way to, we can make this decision and not make somebody happy if they can come to an agreement that, okay, we're gonna need to pull this back or whatever. I'd rather see that than me just trying, let me wiggle here.
I think one thing that people are losing sight of is these are 15,000 square foot lots that these homes are built on. This is not just a regular neighborhood or tract home neighborhood in Turlock. These homeowners on Swan Park and Mooneyham Estates and Kensington or whatever the other one is up there that are privileged enough to live there, they paid a lot of money for that space. That's why this code is in here. That's why you need a variance to change this. So I think, with all due respect, Councilmember Abram, going to a 5-foot setback, that would be a mistake because there's no 5-foot setbacks on Mooneyham Court or Swan Park. It's a cutout area, and you're right. They've developed to the east with newer tract homes, but that's not what's right here in this court and directly behind it.
And I absolutely hear you both on that, especially, but I think there's some complicating factors that the satellite images look like there are a lot of other structures within that setback. So I think that there is more nuance here, but to the mayor's point, absolutely. If this didn't have to come to us, that would be great, but it is here. So I'm just saying that that's the resolution I would support.
Mr. Petrolakis, do you have a light on? You want to talk, sir?
You know, I had my light on, but I absolutely didn't want to talk. But
Now you are.
since we're here, I was afraid the suggestion might be made that you made, Mayor.
I know.
But I think so. I think that, I think I would recommend that the matter be continued maybe to the first meeting of April and see if we can figure something out, you know, or the second one of March, if the council wants to. I mean, I'll make the valiant effort to talk to them.
So my motion would be to approve the resolution as it's written and deny the appeal and affirm the planning commission's order.
I'll second that.
Oh, yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Abram?
No.
Councilmember Vixel?
No.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
No, didn't pass. What's next?
Well, let's see, so that didn't pass.
It wasn't yours.
Yeah.
That wasn't, you didn't fail on this, Mr.
Yeah,
Petrolakis.
that's right.
So, you know what we're getting at here? Do you want to make a motion?
How about it?
A posting, like postpone it?
Yeah, so I move to postpone this to a meeting in April and ask staff to continue working out a alternate solution with the applicant and complainant.
Yeah, it's a motion
Second.
and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
No.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, it passes 4-1. Thank you, Ms. Werner. Thank you for coming. Hopefully, we'll work out something on that. Moving on to item B. Ms. Werner, you're back again.
I am back.
You didn't
again.
leave. Okay.
She wanted to.
I tried to run.
Yeah. That's why we have the police right there.
So, good evening again. This item before you is a general plan amendment and rezone of a 0.91 acre property on the corner of East Avenue and South Berkeley. Baxter Homes is requesting a general plan amendment and rezone to rezone the property from community commercial to a planned development to allow for 6 single-family homes on the lot. They are requesting to go to the residential low-density 4.5 zoning district, which would allow smaller lot sizes, a minimum of 4,500 square feet. The property currently is situated to the east. There are residents to the east across Berkeley are residential homes. To the north, it's pretty well surrounded to the north by residential homes. Also to the south, immediately adjacent to the property is the county island, but it is developed with single-family homes there also. To the west, right, I believe that's both on to the west of that, is a single-family home, but that property is zoned for community commercial, similar to what this one is. But it does currently have a single-family home on site. So Baxter Homes has requested to amend the general plan and rezone the property to allow for the 6 lots along Berkeley here. As you can see, they just kind of, they'll enter off of Berkeley. Full frontage improvements will be done on East Avenue as well as Berkeley Avenue. So this just depicts what the existing zoning is around it. The designation, the yellow are residential, is low-density residential, so you can see that the residential, it's pretty well surrounded by residential. The only commercial in that area is the property right next to it. Even further to the east is medium-density or high-density residential. So it is surrounded by residential. It does kind of make sense to allow an additional residences here, so that's why the planning department and the commission was supportive of it. The commission did at the meeting approve the subdivision map, but it is contingent on the city council approving the general plan amendment and the rezone as well. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm losing my voice. The proposed lot sizes range in size from 6,084 square feet to 8,670 square feet. So they fit right in the line of what our typical low-density residential zoning district lot sizes are. So when we did our public noticing, as I said before, we did have some neighbors who came out who were concerned with the existing traffic in the area now. A lot of people racing up and down Berkeley, coming down East Avenue. However, what we were able to show to the Planning Commission as well as with our city engineer was that the reduction, there's actually a reduction in traffic from a commercial property that's developed to residential. And it would actually go from, if the property was developed with commercial uses, it would go from with 248, 250 daily trips. And with these 6 residences, it would go down to 57 average daily trips. So we were able to show that the impact for traffic is actually reduced by developing it with residential. Additionally, East Avenue, our streets are designed and are meant to carry that type of load. So it would have been analyzed for commercial use, so it's going to be developed for that way. But the impact of traffic by reducing it down to the 57 trips is significantly less than what if it was developed for commercial use. The property is required to annex into the CFD2, which is our Community Facilities District, and that's to help offset the impacts for police and fire and our public services. So this just kind of summarizes some of the concerns that the neighbors that came out and spoke at the Planning Commission had regarding the project. And it was, like I said, it was mainly around traffic. The homeowner to the south in the county island was concerned with, when the improvements are put in, about runoff from rain and water runoff onto her property. But our facilities will be constructed appropriately so that it's all maintained on ours. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Okay, let's open it to public. Come on up. Oh, that's right, I apologize. I'm supposed to remember both of you.
Good evening. My name is Corley Donkers, and this is John Plates, my partner. We are the residents and homeowners of 1578 East Avenue, directly west to the proposed project. We attended the Planning Commission meeting back on January 4th regarding this project and expressed our concerns and multiple different concerns regarding the planned proposal of putting 6 homes on the lot. The first concern that we brought up was that we purchased this property because of the community commercial zoning, because the zoning of the lot that we own is community commercial, as well as the lot directly adjacent. And the reason that we were interested in the community commercial zoning is that we had plans to have a small business, and having a lot adjacent to that would be in line with those plans. We anticipated that the lot would eventually be developed, likely for some sort of business, meaning that any noise that would be on that adjacent lot would be during business hours. There would be no permanent, like people living permanently adjacent to us, giving us a little more privacy to our property and the nature of what we do. Sorry, I have some notes from the previous meeting. I haven't done a lot of public speaking, so I apologize if I stutter or if I stumble a bit. So the community commercial zoning is to provide a wide range of retail stores, restaurants, hotels, motels, recreational, professional services, like personal services, all that stuff. A lot of it entails small businesses, family-owned businesses, like, myself. Rezoning the adjacent property kind of, threatens, or we perceived it as a threat to some of our commercial plans to the property. We were concerned about the increase in the number of neighbors our property would be shared with. As I stated prior, the absence of neighbors on one side is quite appealing. And specifically, we are concerned about sharing a fence line with 4 neighbors that could potentially lead to increased noise, increased.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know I had a time limit.
3 minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to speak?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Slip over.
Okay. So to continue on, we do have some concerns. My name is John. I've been here in Turlock for 25 years. About me, I am the head trainer for a non-profit organization called Dogs for Vets, who trains and provides service dogs for veterans. And my partner is a service dog trainer. It is our plan to open a training business in that vein with the property. Our main concern is the fact that we'll be sharing a fence line with a lot of neighbors, with the potential for dogs to be coming onto our property, and we have dogs. That is very vitally critical that they don't have negative experience with the public and their dogs. Another issue that is very concerning to us is the fact that when we purchased the property, our property and the adjacent property both have the zoning of community commercial. With this rezoning, we believe this will provide or prevent us from developing it at we consider to be a reasonable cost, because the way that the city code is that once this development next door to us becomes a residential, it will become our burden to build a cinder block sound barrier wall in between the 2 properties. We believe that's an undue burden on us. We did our diligence prior to purchasing the property, and so that's a large concern for us.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, he had his 3, you had your 3, that's all. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Nope.
When something like this comes up, I always like to drive out and take a look at it. And the owners who just spoke of the property next to the lot that wants to develop, they still can do what they want to do, and there would be no guarantee if it were developed commercially that they would have the quietness or the solitude that they want to have. So I can't see where that would be a factor. And this would provide 6 housing units for the city of Turlock. And this is infill land, and what we want to do is build out our infill land. The developer made a great presentation at the Planning Commission and explained everything very well. All the streets, everything, the water is going to be flowing in the right direction. It will not impair on the couple here. And the state law actually allows this. There's nothing unusual about this. State law says that, yes, you can take commercial properties and you can convert them into residential properties. And they actually encourage it now because we have such a housing shortage. So I'm sorry that the current owners have issues with this, but this is a great project. It's something we need here in Turlock. So I think it's a great idea to go ahead and get the 6 houses in there so we have our housing that we need. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Seems to me that original lot had a small grocery store on it, and it burned down 20 years ago, 25 years ago. So for 25 years, we've had a bare vacant lot, not contributing anything to the economy for a lot. I kind of agree with Milt that it needs to be developed into some housing, and 6 small houses are going to sell better in this high interest rate environment we're in now than 3 larger ones. But on the other hand, I think the people who just spoke have a good point, and I'm wondering if they could somehow meet with the developer and they could put up that concrete block wall as part of the development. And maybe that would take care of the problem. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to second what he just said. I thought of the same thing, meet with the developer and see if they can, put up a concrete wall in between the places, and that might address at least some of their concerns. And that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, let's close public comment and bring it back. Did you not discuss that? Did they not discuss that at?
The planning commission did, Ms. Donkers did bring that issue up. The planning commission did discuss it. The developer heard their concerns. The planning commission did not require that a masonry wall be built.
Okay. What's the will? It's already closed, sir, sorry.
Is there a way to ask the developer now to see if they could split the cost of the wall? Do a partial masonry wall?
Ms. Baxter's here if you would like to, I don't know if she.
Yeah, I understand. Why don't you step up to the microphone? Thank you.
I'm Rachel with Baxter Jones. So, just to reiterate, that masonry wall would be very costly. We do plan on putting up fencing, wood fencing. We think that would suffice, and I think aesthetically, a masonry wall is going to make it look very industrial when all that surrounding area is residential. And I think there's going to definitely be a lot less noise or potential problems with a residential area there versus commercial. I mean, you could have a liquor store there that's open till midnight, 10, 11 o'clock, and you've got people coming and going. I think that's a lot more dangerous and more of a concern than having a neighbor behind you that has a dog that could potentially be barking, which they would probably complain, and then the city would tell the residents there that they needed to, mind the rules there. And let's see, and they don't have an existing business there now. So we're kind of, it doesn't, so that's concerning too. And I think definitely that we need more housing. And not these McMansions, people can't afford them. So, the smaller lots, a residential home, single family dwellings there, I think would be quite beneficial to the economy. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, to just have a couple of comments. I have to commend Baxter because this is a great use of a very small, unusable lot. To put 6 houses on there is very wise in an area that is an infill. I love the idea. The smaller houses will sell fast. They're needed in our community. I would, as a builder developer myself, I would just hope that you could help your neighbor and do something with the fence. I understand the cost of a block wall is extremely expensive, but maybe some other type of not so expensive fence that could help maybe ease their burden a little bit. But that's my comments.
Other comments? What's the will?
Move to approve.
Your boot black. I just kind
I'm
of,
sorry.
if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Just to as the previous speaker spoke, it does not preclude them from operating a business currently. It would be more if they were to develop a commercial site with the type of uses that would be allowed in that zoning district. then that commercial endeavor would be required to put in. So if they were going to put in, stores and a gas station, that type of development would be. But if they have a home-based business or something that's similar, that would not trigger the requirement for the masonry wall.
Got it.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think your job is done tonight. All right, where's the road doctor? Mr. Pazej. Did he quit? Did he go home? What happened?
Regan fired him.
Oh, he wants, okay, we got red carpet for him? There we go. You're up. Mr. Pazej, you are up, sir. There are roads to be fixed. Who knew?
Oh. I think I've forgotten all of my presentation here.
You want me to do this for you? I got it.
Well, this is way past my bedtime.
I know.
I wake up at 5 a.m., so it's already a long day.
Okay.
So, I'll try to make this as brief and concise as possible. First of all, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We have 3 items before you tonight, and I have a few slides for each one of them, and at the very end, a few slides to basically show you where we are with the roads program so far. The first item before you is for the approval of master agreements for construction management and inspection services. Before I go any further, a little background here, a little refresher basically. Last year on April 25, the council approved the design of 22 streets. Before that, the council approved the master agreements for design services, and these 22 streets were the first round of task orders for projects to be designed by the 3 selected design consultants. The first design consultant is Mark Thomas, and these are the streets that they are designing currently. We decided that streets south of Canal, these streets would be 1 bid package. North of Canal would be a 2nd bid package. The second consultant is Provo and Pritchard, and these are their streets. That's 1 bid package. And Siegfried is the 3rd consultant, and these are the streets that they are designing. So that would be another bid package. Altogether, we have 4 bid packages to take to the streets this year for construction of those 22 streets. Now, seeing all this work coming this year and anticipating more work continuing with the roads program, what we did last October is we issued a request for qualifications for construction management inspection services. In general, 3 sets of activities are defined as part of the requested services. One is pre-construction. That is the services that are required before the construction actually starts. Construction management inspection is practically 95% of the entire scope and fee, and that's all the activities during construction to oversee and manage the entire construction and make sure that everything is constructed by the contractor in accordance with the approved bid documents, plans, and specifications. Post-construction is basically the wrap-up part and making sure all the documentation is in place and the contractor overall is paid for the entire work that is actually done and accepted. So we received 4 statements of qualifications in November. We reviewed those, and then we interviewed all 4 consultants. And on that basis, we are awarding that the master agreements be awarded to CCME Inc., Mark Thomas and Company Inc., and NV5 Inc. So you have 3 resolutions before you, and each resolution is for each of these 3 consultants for the construction management inspection services, the master agreement for these services. What happened here? There we go. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Pazej?
Hurry up.
No, that's not a question.
How fast can you
Oh,
do
there
it?
you go. Very right.
How fast can the system handle it? That's really it.
Ow.
And I will get to that, and I will get to
Then
that.
another one.
I have good news.
Any other questions? All right, open it to the public.
At just a recent meeting, we had three firms who were voted on for so much per year, $300,000 per year. Are these the three firms that we voted on already, the council's already voted on?
We'll get back to that. Do you have any other questions?
So that's basically my question. It came out at the last meeting or the meeting just before that. I'm sorry, I don't have the agenda for that.
Anybody else? Ron?
Okay. I would like to see if you can make these graphics available.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, because I looked for some of them in the package and couldn't see them. Okay. Okay. Back in April 2023, I wrote Vice Mayor Franco asking, quote, what happened to the roads workshop we were promised, where I thought we would talk about road selection strategy and funding opportunities, end of quote. To her credit, I received a response a day later. Quote, I met with City Manager Wilson this afternoon. Roads workshop will be forthcoming. It will talk about funding, priorities, and road selections. City Manager Wilson will hold the public meeting. Council members will either be audience members or not there to ensure that the public gets their wishes and it does not become about future elections. Other than the first 14 streets in this next request for engineering, there has not been a priority list of streets compiled yet. Fred is working on each grouping of streets and will have the list after the workshop with the public, end of quote. Okay, so that was back in April of 2023. I'm wondering when we're going to have this roads workshop, okay, so we can get some input on the public and have some input and some better understanding of the roads program. I will remind Councilmember Abram that you asked a very good question 6 months or so ago, that you asked for more information to be presented to the public, specifically what will Turlock look like in, I think you said 15 years, with this roads program. And when I think of that, what I think of is that PCI map of, showing the different colors, okay? And I think that's a great way of conveying to the public. That's really how we can understand what's going on. So I'd like to see that. And one of my concerns that I'll talk about at the next one is how the roads are being selected. Okay, so so roads workshop. Thank you.
Bob?
Money. We're hiring some people to do some preliminary design work to the tune of, I don't know, what, $2.5 million. It's all said and done tonight. There's limited amounts of money we have with Measure A, with all the other things that the council wants to do with it. My question is, how are you gonna finance this thing? If we wanna do this design work and we wanna do it quick, I don't think you're gonna get enough money in Measure A to do this in 2 or 3 years. And interest rates are high enough now, I don't think you can borrow the money. And I wouldn't see why anybody would wanna lend the money. And I'm not even sure what my point is here, other than there's been a baseball team that's trying to move to Las Vegas, and they've done everything. And most importantly, they didn't have their finances lined up before they started even contemplating this. This is very nice what you want to do here, but I'd sure like to see how it's going to get financed before you start doing this thing. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, let's close public comment. Can you answer these questions that we've been
Some
asked?
of them.
Okay.
You can phone Mr. Marino if you need to on the
Oh,
line.
absolutely. He knows he's coming up
Look
for
at
the
him.
money
Yes, he
portion.
does. Look at
The,
him
I
go.
believe the first question had to do with the contracts that were recently approved. What I know about those is those are on-call, small contracts. So the limit is not all that high, and those are generally for general public works projects that are done for the city. None of those contracts are for construction management and inspection. These are specifically for the roads program. Making the presentation available, absolutely. That will go online at the roads program website, hopefully tomorrow. You asked a question about workshops. Generally, based on my experience, workshop is very effective for specific projects such as a corridor. For example, Gear Road. That is a very specific, high-profile project, and we are going to have a public meeting for that and solicit everyone's comments, hopefully in early April. We haven't set an exact date, but it will be the first or second week of April, and I will make sure that everybody knows about it and it is publicized. Basically, for meetings such as that, we ask for input, we record the input, and then we address those comments. So as far as residential areas, it becomes very difficult to have a whole lot of folks talking about their own block or their own neighborhood. How do you hear what it is that they want? Everybody wants their streets fixed. Understand that. But the part that also speaks to how the streets are selected, you have just about 3,000 street segments in the street saver. So take a street and it can be in 5, 6, maybe even 10 segments depending on the length. At the time that the database was put together, they basically looked at the condition of the street, and logically they decided, okay, the first 200 feet is this condition relatively consistently. The next segment is this, the next segment is that. That's how they ended up with the original database. So I can look at the condition of these segments, but on the same street, as you can see based on the tables, you have different PCIs. So the process that I go through is basically, one, drive the streets. We know most of the bad areas as far as the street condition. That's number one. I run database results based on PCI conditions. But again, the same street, different segments can end up in different priorities, different locations, because the PCIs are not the same. So I look at different streets, try to aggregate the PCI along the whole length of the street. There is no reason to do quilt work. We're not going to do one block and the next block, forget about that because it's in relatively good condition, do the next one, and so on and so forth. I take the whole length of the street and try to fix the whole street depending on what type of fix it needs at different sections. So once you do that, you have fixed now the entire street. The entire street becomes a PCI of 100 in the street saver, and now it goes automatically into a rotation within 7 years for slurry seal. So this is how methodically I'm trying to go about fixing the streets. The priority is absolutely on the worst streets, but what is a worst street? You have to aggregate the PCIs along the length of the street. So that's a rather time-consuming process, and at the end of it, you end up with a lot of streets that are pretty much the same as far as the overall condition of PCI, and it becomes a matter of how to bundle those so we can get a good bid as far as a bid package that is reasonable for a contractor to bid on.
Last one's Mr. Moreno's.
Yes, Mr. Moreno.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. So talking about funding sources, we had this conversation prior. We kind of really ramped up into this whole thing and what it's all going to look like. So I presented a cash flow model on how we're going to be able to get this done. This program is, as you know, a very massive and expensive project. We're going to be looking at that cash flow model every year. We're going to be looking at the budget cycle. The primary funding sources still have not changed. Measure A obviously is a primary objective of the whole roads program, but we're also going to roll in Measure L as well as some debt structure. So we've been utilizing those reserves that have been building up for some time now, right? So we still have appropriate reserves to be able to take these things on. We're now re-engaging our finances team to see what does the market look like at this point and where do we need to go. So we'll get into a little more depth in that during the budget process, but basically by holding off a little bit, we've actually going to save because the interest is actually starting to come down. Right, so we've been seeing it kind of climbing, where if we would have been talking this a couple months, you'd be looking about 5%. Talking to municipal advisor, we're more like 4.5 now. So we're starting to taper down a little bit because of what the market is looking like. So we're always reassessing that. But from a project perspective and how the cash flow model is going to work, we're going to look at it every year. That cash flow model is going to change. That number is going to change. Projects could be more expensive. That's just constant communication between the two departments to make sure that we're getting these projects done.
Thank you. What's Will?
I just have a comment first. Mr. Pizzetto, I just want to thank you for explaining that kind of process and all that goes into it. You and I have had conversations about it, and this is a huge citywide project, and it's a very complicated puzzle because not only are you saying you have to find different segments of road, but it's the big packages, like you said, and then also considering what areas can have construction at certain times because people still need to drive places. So I thank you for explaining that. And my only request for staff that's here is, perhaps our communications team can help you convey that to the public, whether it's through our local media or through social media, or, because I know a lot of good work is coming, and the fruit of that labor is shown here with the 4.5 pages worth of roads that are going to be done. So I would just hope that the city can help ourselves communicate that to everyone who's interested, because obviously everyone is interested, and thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to approve, Madam Clerk. I have one comment.
Oh,
for
I'm
that.
sorry. I thought that was it. I'm sorry.
We did promise the public a workshop, and so I would still like to reiterate that we promised them a workshop. We need to deliver on our promise. And I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, passes 5-0. Adam Beeser?
Excellent. Yes, the next item before you is the first task orders under the master agreements that you just approved. And these are only for pre-construction services because the design of those 22 streets are not at a stage where we know exactly how many working days the construction is going to take. And like I said, the middle part, which is the construction and inspection, construction management inspection activities, that is practically 95% of the entire scope and cost. And for that is based on the number of working days. So we don't have that information yet. In anticipation of construction coming up, we are asking that the 3 consultants that you just awarded the master agreements to be also awarded their first task orders. CCME, we can't see it at the top, but at the very top it says CCME, that's their task order number 1, and that is for Mark Thomas's package 1, which is these streets south of the canal. NB5 will have streets north of canal that are being designed by Mark Thomas, plus these streets that are being designed by Siegfried, the balance, which is being designed by Provo and Pritchard. Those are the ones that we are proposing that Mark Thomas oversee the construction and inspection of. So these are the 4 task orders. one for each of the bid packages. And you have one resolution before you for approval of these four. Any questions?
Questions? All right, let's open it to public.
Okay, Robert Puffer, Turlock. Okay, now we've filed a master agreement with these three firms, or four firms, and now we want to say you're going to do actual construction management on all those 20-some odd roads. You're dividing that up, and then after this goes, which is $170,000, then you're going to throw out $3 million on the next one for the engineering. Is that what I'm going to understand? That number C is going to be engineering. So we're going to be going over about $3.2 million tonight. Not a road has been touched. Our financing is in limbo because we're going to look at it year to year. And this is all supposed to turn out well.
Anybody else?
Seems like instead of me again, it's us again. Okay. I was going to complain about Director Werner. I think she said me again. So I was going to say, no, you can't say that. That's my intellectual property. Okay. Okay. Well, at least I gave some good laughter. Okay. Yeah, what was I going to say now? Okay, yeah. Let me just reemphasize the workshops and the things that you have been explaining. These are things that the public needs to hear, okay? Whenever I post anything like I did yesterday on Save Turlock about roads, I always get comments about, you know, why isn't this getting done? Why the council isn't doing anything? You're a bunch of idiots, and, you know, all this other stuff. And no matter how many times I tell people that, you know, it's a $250 million problem that isn't going to be fixed overnight, you still get those comments. So I think it would be good. The more communication you guys can do, I think it would be better for everyone, okay? And maybe this will be in the, I think there's another future item about the budget later on, or mid-year budget item, something like that. I was going to ask the question about how much money is in the Measure A roads account and the Measure L account. I don't know if that's actually in the agenda package, but that's a question that I would have about that.
Before you leave, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Can you clarify for me, maybe I'm misunderstanding, what your intention is? What do you want to get out of this workshop? How do you see it?
Well, I think part of it is, like the Vice Mayor said, in terms of discussion about funding, priorities, and road selections. So we've got a large problem. We're talking about taking on a large amount of debt, doing it in a, shall we say, fairly unique way, okay? And I think that the public should be aware of that.
Okay, I agree.
Okay. And then, you know, how are roads selected? I thought you gave a very excellent, you know, thing about, you know, different segments and how you try to do an entire road and stuff like that. I think that will help people understand.
Let's try that offline, because I think it's going to be a longer want
Yeah.
on that, I bet.
But that's,
No,
Well, I appreciate this
no, yeah, yeah.
because
Basically.
we're, Mr. Bridegroom, going
And I would
is
hope it
going
would be
with this.
just the public and not us, because I don't
right,
want politics to be a
right.
part of this, so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yep.
I like to go back a few years and talk about the past and talk about Nathan when he was our city engineer. I really like the way that he organized the selection of roads. And one thing I really liked, the roads that are now being built here on the west side, he planned them so that when you finished, you had a complete road going from one end to the other. And here I see a lot of roads just sticking out here and there. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. When I drive in my neighborhood, he didn't pick the road that I wanted, but that was okay because he picked two roads. I have two choices of coming to city council meetings, and they're both on good roads. And that's what I was emphasizing at that time. We need to have roads that you can, in one single neighborhood, you can travel around. And that's what I really like about my neighborhood now. We've got two new roads that Nathan had designed for us in my neighborhood, and actually on the south side of West Main also. I'm on the north side of West Main, where you can actually travel between places that you need to go. Here it just looks like we're into cul-de-sacs and stuff like that. I'm not even sure what the actual material is, but I just like to get from point A to point B. And when I have two choices, I used to have to use one street, but now it's wearing out. But you gave me two new streets, so I can just move a couple streets over. It doesn't bother me in the least. I really enjoy it. I'm riding on a new street, and it's all the way through. I can go from North Sodaquist all the way to Broadway. Broadway, I'm here at the council chambers. So I like that, or I can even use West Main if I make a turn. I like the continuity. Nathan had everything set up so you had everything connected in a logical manner. This looks kind of scattered. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, close public comment and bring it back. Did you designed the last ones, all over on the west side, correct?
All the 15 there, yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And those streets are the entire length.
Right, so that was yours, understood.
I'm not sure what the reference
I'm sorry, please, we
No, we
closed.
didn't.
Okay,
No.
anybody
Motion
else?
approved.
Second.
We have motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes. And it passes 5-0. One more?
One more, the last item is for the new task orders for design. One thing that I want to bring to your attention is in the staff report on page 6, top paragraph, there's a reference to a separate motion. There is no separate motion. Everything was rolled into one resolution. So these are the streets that are being proposed for design. Cul-de-sacs are done simply because the practice by a lot of cities is to do the main road and leave the cul-de-sacs. We are not going to do that. If we are doing the road, we are going to address the cul-de-sacs, so they're not going to just sit there. Some cul-de-sacs are getting done simply because they are in very bad condition, and the adjacent road is not in all that bad a condition. They have been left behind before. Those folks pay their taxes. We are going to fix those roads based on the condition. So there are a couple of examples of that you see here. So the first one is task order number 3 that goes to Mark Thomas. These are the streets that we are proposing that they design. Provo and Pritchard has these streets. Again, the list, let me go back one slide here. One of the things that we want to do is with Gear Road coming up, we want to do these streets first and get them out of the way. On this package, very much the same thing. This is Provo and Pritchard, Donnelly Park area, and this metal mark is going to get done ahead so we can get out of the way of the Gear Road coming up. And this is the third task order, and that is for Siegfried. So you have one resolution before you for approval of all these streets, and these are the specific project numbers associated with each design task order and the approximate construction cost for each one of them. Any questions?
Questions? Open it to the public.
Okay, I hope I can make some sense here. This is probably a longer discussion, but one of my concerns, this is going to sound horrible, about making the priority is on the worst streets. But one of my concerns, one of the ideas that was talked about before is that there are some streets that if we fix them now, the cost for fixing them is fairly low. If we wait for 5 years, 10 years to be able to get around to them because we're fixing all the bad streets, they will deteriorate and then become more expensive to fix, okay? Now, what I would have liked to see is a study on the Street Saver, to actually see how many of those streets we actually have. I don't know, okay? It may not be an issue, okay? But if we can find how many of those streets that if we work on now can be saved at relatively low cost, and if we know that and fold that into the process of how we're selecting streets, then we can minimize our cost. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because we just don't have enough money. It's been admitted on the dais. We don't have enough money to fix all the streets, okay? So this may be a way of more cost effectively fixing as many streets as possible, okay? Then I would also just say myself, Dell's Lane in District 4.
That's not on this topic.
It's not on this list.
That's probably why you're saying it, huh?
Yeah, that's why I'm saying it. It's falling apart. It happens to be, what is it, Ontario Road, I think is what it is, an Ontario Road. It's not a residential
It's
road.
a collector.
A collector road, yeah, thank you, collector road.
But that's not one of these three that we're voting on tonight.
Are you saying that that's coming for some?
I'm sure it's coming, but not tonight.
Okay,
I
well,
mean, soon, right? But yeah.
all that I know is that it's you know, it's not a residential road. It's a collective road. It's used by a lot of people, and it's very rapidly falling apart. So, just put in a plug for that.
Understood.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I think I got everything.
Anybody else
Thank you.
for item C? Item C.
Engineering, these specific roads.
Okay, so we just spent $170,000. Now we're getting ready to spend $3 million for design work. Mr. Bridegroom brought up a very good point. In addition to trying to save some roads that maybe only need a slurry seal or something to get another few years out of them, or decade out of them, I'd like to know how often those people in the areas where you pay extra money and they have their roads resealed, I imagine it's done, what, every 4 or 5 years? Anybody know?
Seven. Continue.
Seven?
Seven.
Okay, it seems to me we started rebuilding, well, you know what? West Main's probably coming up on 5 years now. So if we're spending all this money now, are we budgeting money aside to slurry seal West Main in 2 years? So we don't go through this again. In addition to all the other older roads that maybe could be saved by slurry sealing. And how are we going to fund that? Especially if we're going to, you know, drop $50 million in bonds, and so we have a debt service of, I have no idea how long you pay those bonds off. I hope the bonds aren't longer than the length of a slurry seal. But, I mean, are we going to release 50 million 30-year bonds for 10-year roads? Again, I think this is not on selecting the roads and that stuff, but not getting tasking and how we're going to pay for it in order, right at the start. Thank you.
Anybody else?
When the city had Nathan Bray as our engineer, he was doing the work of all the people you're hiring tonight, and he was doing it in a logical manner so you could get around town from one section to another in corridors. He was doing the main collector roads, and that's what we need. We just want to get around town. We're not interested in actually the condition of a road in a cul-de-sac. That's not going to help the people of Turlock drive from one side of town to the other. I really like the way Nathan Bray did it. We've got plans that show what he did 5 or 6, 10 years, or 8 years ago, and they were excellent plans. And we don't have him here now. I just wonder why we don't have him here now, because he did an excellent job and saved the city a lot of money.
Anybody else?
Maybe somebody that lives in a cul-de-sac?
All right, we'll close public comment. Mr. Pezich, can you just speak to the fact that I know you have interest in making sure that we maintain the roads that have been fixed,
Yes,
correct?
that's actually one of the slides that is coming up.
Excellent.
And as far as a comment that you made, streets that can be saved, again, let's go back to the idea that you can't find a street necessarily. These are street segments. So the way to go around that is by looking at the entire street. Sections of the same length of the street are the same category that you are talking about. So I'm trying to overcome that by looking at the entire street. So yes, I will have a last slide that speaks to maintenance. So I can answer that question at that.
Madam Clerk, motion to approve.
I have one quick question before we do that.
Yes.
I think you mentioned a few items ago that 90%, pre-construction is 90% of the cost or the work, or both?
Both.
Okay,
Both.
and so there's, what, three other things that happen there?
Don't
and-
extrapolate like that, please, because
Okay.
we have to see, it can be the cost does not necessarily mean that the number of working days is going to be also
Okay.
proportionally as long. So we have to look at what the engineer estimates as far as the number of working days.
Okay,
And that translates into how many days the inspection has to take place. That obviously times the labor cost becomes the cost that they will bring in.
okay,
So as far as their own cost, yes, that would be the majority of the cost.
okay. I'll follow up with you about that.
Glad to see that Districts 3 and 4 are getting some love on this one. Second.
Yes.
A motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Vixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes, 5-0. All right.
All right, now a few slides. These were the 15 streets. These are the 22 streets that are under design for construction.
Can you
this
speak
year.
up into the mic for us? Thank you so much.
Yes. Do you want me to go back?
No, that's good. You're good.
And this is Gear Road that you approved last August. And these are the streets that you approved tonight for design. And this is the overall impact that you will see through 2026. Where do we go? Catch-up maintenance. There has been a number of years of neglected maintenance. Streets are in the condition that they are because they were not maintained. The city has not had a crack seal program or a consistent slurry seal program outside of the assessment districts. So yes, the focus right now is on fixing the streets that are in absolutely poor condition. But I have not neglected this either. I'm looking at lists on catch-up. Yes, Main Street, definitely. You look at Hawkeye, that's another one. There are a number of streets that you can look at and you can say that they are overdue for slurry seal. Definitely crack seal. It's absolutely a shame that this city does not have a crack seal program. So these are the things that we are looking at. If you don't fix the cracks, you generally, after you fix the road, within a couple of years, you better go there and take a look and see if the cracks are propagating, old cracks are coming back, or new cracks are opening up. Get a feel for what is going on with the pavement, and be on the lookout for sealing those cracks so water doesn't get in there, elements don't get in there and deteriorate the pavement. And within 6, 7, maximum 8 years, you need to go back and seal the surface. You have to have that as part of your overall maintenance program. So one is the catch-up, what has been neglected, and trying to basically crack seal and slurry seal what is now suitable for those fixes. The other one is long-term maintenance. As you spend all this money on fixing the roads, Street Saver automatically puts it on the 7-year cycle, and we can have a cost associated with that. The beauty of doing the entire road is you're not going to do patchwork like we have been doing in many areas.
Amen.
The entire street is going to be crack sealed reasonably at the same time, but definitely slurry sealed at the same time, and that's a lot of cost savings. Future design projects, yes, I'm always working on additional projects. There's another list, another batch that is coming up, hopefully towards the end of the year, to continue feeding the pipeline. We need to have shovel-ready projects so we can see at what pace we can actually take these to construction, depending on the available funding, whether we have enough contractors available, what our internal capacity is to manage those projects, and other factors. What streets am I looking at? You saw Meadowlark, and probably you said, what is he doing on Meadowlark? Well, these are all prep work. There is a method to this madness, and I can't honestly spend a whole lot of time and talk about all of this. You will see them come together. Meadowlark is getting, basically, get it done, get it out of the way. It's in very bad condition. I have projects coming up along Tuolumne and Olive. I want to clear those areas, get the nuisance. Basically, when you look at the overall project, these small ones take a lot of time for the contractor to finish. Get these out of the way so they can come in and take care of Tuolumne, take care of North Olive. Broadway is another one that would be nice to take care of. Yes, Dell's Lane has been on the calendar for a couple of years. We are going to get to that hopefully in the next round. So there are a number of streets that I'm looking at, and you will see that these pieces are going to connect.
Awesome. Thank you.
So
You're doing a great job. Appreciate it.
that's it.
That's it.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Now we have to talk money. Mr. Moreno,
Yes.
show us money.
Thank you.
Let's start with no.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and council members. So the item today that for you is our mid-year review. So as you know, within the fiscal year, we adopt a budget. So the last budget for 22-23 was adopted on June 13th of 23. You see me come to you as a quarterly basis and go in an overview of what the budget's looking like. The understanding is to get count for information from fiscal standpoint of how the city stands from the current budget factors and how, going forward. The bid year is a little more detailed in a sense of the way of how my presentation kind of flows. We're going to take a little harder look at what those actual revenue streams look like. So the basic understanding from mid-year is how we fiscally look going into the future, right, for this fiscal year. So if I come to you saying, hey, our revenue projections are really not coming into where they need to be, we need to start having a conversation on what that looks like and how we're going to correct that flow. Or we have new revenues that are coming in, or revenues are coming in over forecast, so what does that look like and how are we going forward? So this presentation is going through that analysis and giving you that information. So within the fiscal year budget, we'll talk about the general fund, a couple of other funds and kind of give some information. At this point in time, it's also departments can make requests potentially of items that came out during the budget process that we weren't able to fund at that time due to the constraints of what the budget revenues looked like. But also we can talk about different things that may be impacting for projects that are currently going on. A great example is something that came up with Townsend talking about the shop theft and things of that nature. So there's a proposal in there and how we're going to start trying to address that by increasing a request for overtime. So we're going to go through the analysis and what that looks like, and we'll go through the report. So we will start with the general fund overall and talk about the health of the overall fund. Why is the general fund so critical? It's a major component of overall services, right? Most of the other funds are service funds related and have specific tasks in which they can only do. Enterprise, like utilities and stuff like that, we also have steady revenues where they're projected out. We're a little cleaner to be able to see how they're flowing. But the general fund is really dependent on sales tax and property tax to make sure those revenue streams come in. So we really have to keep a critical eye on it. So as you can see from the model itself, you can see the overall revenue streams are coming in about 51%. Well, the expenditures are coming at about 47% of the overall budget. So at the current estimate we're looking at is about 1.8 of an overage, or anyways, over expenditures with the current overall projections. So what does that mean, right? So a lot of it is built into the staff report to give you a little bit of analysis on what it all looks like. A big chunk of it is really due to our sales tax projection where they're coming in. So how do we project sales tax? Obviously, we have consultants who assist in building the models. Amazon is going to be one of the primary drivers. It's not the only one, but it is a good driver of what's coming on. So Amazon in the prior fiscal year going into the budget cycle was still early. We're starting to see those revenue streams come in, but we didn't have a true picture of what it looks like. So I wouldn't say conservative, but we use the information we had to go forward. And that's why we do a mid-year to do a new look of what our revenue streams look like. So the general fund is looking healthy coming into the fiscal year at midpoint, again at a 1.8. We've built a model in the sense that it kind of explains it a little bit more about sales tax and what it looks like. So we'll get into that too as well. So this is kind of going over the same information. It's really a bar chart and kind of giving you what we budgeted versus actual. Actually looking at today's information, we did receive February sales tax allocation. So our estimates for that one, we're looking at about 2.1. They're coming about $500,000 over that projection. So we continue to grow and we continue to move forward, which will be helpful going into the fiscal years and how we do things. So this right here is our reserve kind of for the general fund and kind of giving an overview of what it looks like. This is a topic that I'm going to come back with next council meeting to go over what the fiscal policy is on the reserves, right? We adopted a policy a while back on how we can deal with these things and what that looks like. So looking at the reserve as a snapshot, we have 26.5 overall in the general fund as a reserve. Our fiscal policy dictates that 22.5% of that is actually restricted for safeguarding for future flows, right? To make sure that if we do have a downturn in the market, whatever that downturn may be, we can sustain that. But what that means is because we're pulling back in building and engineering, our adopted budget is really going to be about $59 million. So that means about 13 of this excess is actually going to be allocated into another format in which council deems going to be approved. So we're going to come back with that conversation. So I don't really want to go into too much depth with that because we're really going to get into further conversation on what that all looks like. So the next part of the overall package kind of goes into what I like to say, the request as well as cleanup. So within the budget process, let's say we have an information in, primarily a lot of it goes to the equipment reserves accounts. The equipment reserve accounts have a lot of have money in them. When they project out what's going to be bought in one year versus the other, sometimes it doesn't come in. So in the fiscal year, last fiscal year, we thought, well, a truck was going to come in, and that didn't occur. But it's now fallen into this fiscal year. So that's why I call it cleanup. The money's there. We're not asking for new money. It's reappropriating the funds that were there last year that really didn't get utilized. So the equipment funds you're primarily going to see doing a lot of that activity. And some of it is cleanup activity overall on how it got adopted in the budget process. So that's kind of the cleanup overall, what you'll see of a lot of those numbers. The next one's going to be the augmentation request. So kind of go through some highlights of what some of these numbers are. The first ones are talking about staffing levels and trying how we can assist with some of those activities. Again, a lot of this derives from the budget conversations in the past, sort of things that may not occurred or new activities that have occurred. So the first one is looking at $18,000 for part-time assistants in the HR department. Some of these are reclassifications or shifting up to leads to be able to take on new tasks. A lot of this is really stuff that's already occurring. We're kind of just cleaning up those tasks and what they look like or shifting the model so that we have the appropriate level of people at the shifts they need to be. So the bigger one you're going to see, again, we talked about for $60,000 is the overtime for real theft operation. I mean, we all assess that it's been a big topic statewide and nationwide. So this is the chief's aspects to try and be able to get ahead of that. So that wasn't built into the previous model. We will want to try and account for it now. see. The next one is a higher level position in the sense of the way as far as the dollar amount would be a new position for, I guess, investigative services, investigations unit analyst. This is for funding for 3 months. Basically, this individual will be assisting with the detectives unit to be able to take on a lot of the data mining that's coming in. So we're getting a lot of information coming in from cell phones that need to be addressed, calculated, and put together for the information they need to do. This overall position is built to assist the detectives, to pull them away from having to do those tasks, to be able to go out and do the investigations they really need. The next items that you're seeing are the ELOT program. This is a new program that Recreation is putting together. It's fully grant funded, so it's really just accounting for the revenue and the expenses that are coming in. The next one down is $47,000 salaries and benefits for the engineering department. This is a new full-time position for senior construction inspector. This is really built into what the program is we talked about today. We're really starting to ramp up. Construction can really start going. We have a lot of different packets that are going on. It's kind of building up that micro division for the roads program to assist with that so that we can keep on track and continue to grow. The next one is used to be for municipal services. Again, just kind of restructuring a little bit and moving funds around to keep bringing a new position, but reduce some part-time labor. Please stop me at any time if you want to go into further detail.
Now he says it.
So you know me, I go through it.
Can we start over? No, just kidding.
We'll call Fred back up. So the next ones are some of the information as far as what we call maintenance and other. Again, kind of cleaning up some of the revenue streams overall that the ELOT program is bringing in and some of the recreational supplies that are needed for that program. The next one is just Department of Transportation signage and equipment. For local transportation streets, is just equipment that's needed to maintain some different signalizations. So the next one is vehicle and equipment requests. This is going to be the big one. You're going to see from both PD and police are making a request for an additional allocation of funds from the general fund to go into their equipment programs to be allocated to their vehicle funds. What does this mean? This goes back to the conversation in the budget process. We can't take it all the time, right? We have to make adjustments and shifts. One thing I like to call it is it's a big puzzle. Right? We go through the conversation, we get some directions, and we start moving all around. So what that means is we have to adjust for those impacts. The two items that are identified in the report are actually just both equal items we adjust. If they're not asking for more, they're not asking for less. It's exactly what got cut of their original request. Police and fire, that's correct.
Did you say police empire?
Oh, sorry. Fire acts like an empire sometimes, so, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes over the information as far as what's in the report and what's being requested. To kind of address the overall, what we're looking at today, we're looking at revenue expenditures. We're not looking at fund balances and how that all flows. We're making sure that things are on track. One of the comments in the previous is, what are the fund balances in Measure A? I do want to direct people to our website. It has that information. We have quarterly meetings that actually have that information in that's adopted and reviewed by the committee. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that for further information. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Question.
Uh-oh.
On page, let's see, it would be, the staff report, page 3, gives the little graph, sales tax mid-year, but down below that is a property tax.
Correct.
It says property tax is coming in about 133,000 under budget.
Correct. So
Why are we having why is it down? Because
we did a property
prices-
tax share that
So
should have increased.
we get multiple
right?
chunks, and we also get cleanups. So most
Okay,
likely
so
the
this is a
cleanup will pick
cleanup,
that up.
because property values are not going down.
In January we get 55%, right? And then in, I want to say April or May we get another chunk of it too as well. And at the very end we'll get a cleanup item, and some stuff comes in through the year too as well. So
Delinquent property taxes, maybe?
correct. So it's not. I wouldn't say this is a material item overall, but because we got a big chunk of it already. If you look at the grand scheme of it, 1.9%. Yeah, it's an impact, but it's something we have to point out.
It's not big. I was just wondering why we were seeing a
Yeah.
decline in property taxes when property values are not down.
Yeah, probably what you see is some cleanups,
Okay.
right?
Perfect. Thank you.
Could I offer an idea on that? Because, property taxes, the tax base is going to be reassessed when sales are happening. So if sales are not happening as property values going up, but if they're not happening as fast, if the market's not moving as fast, then it could be slightly below projection. That's just some food for thought.
Properties are moving. real estate broker. Yeah, properties are moving. There's nothing on the
There's
market.
lots in my district that have been on the market for a long time, so that's where we are.
Okay, other questions for Finance Director? Okay, let's open it public. Anybody? All right.
On page 5 of the report, in the summary, okay, we're saying now that we have recommendations on how to utilize the reserve funds in excess of the 22.5% will be brought to the council tonight for discussion. So what part was that? Just the fact that you explained it to us, or?
No, tonight we'll actually just overview and give what the numbers look like, but in the staff report, it mentions March 12th of 2024, the council will be discussing and seeking direction on that.
On page 5?
In the summary analysis, it's the last page of the summary analysis.
Mine says February 27th.
Yeah, it got corrected because it was actually going to be tonight, but it got moved due to the size of the packet. So that's why I updated the staff report, and I must have just missed it.
So it'll be the next meeting.
So my copy says March 12th.
And I think everyone can thank us, or thank partially me, because I was very instrumental in getting Measure A passed. I've talked about it in the past, and that's what's saving us that 3/4 cent sales tax.
Anybody else? All right, let's close the public comment. And what is you need no action on this?
I do.
You do?
Because of the augmentations that were requested,
Okay.
you can take them as whole, you can discuss them, but yeah, the motion is to approve all the
Fair enough.
requests.
Well, what does everyone want to do? All at the same time or one at a time?
Yeah, no, let's do them all at the same time, unless somebody wants to break something down.
All at the same time?
Yeah.
Move to approve. All.
Okay, have a motion and a second? Call the roll. Okay,
Is
confused.
there a third? I'm sorry.
I think there was. Call the roll?
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes.
Thank you.
Passed 5-0. Thank you, Director Moreno. All right, Ms. Dami? Looks like the police empire needs more.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and the public. The item before you is approving the establishment of a new job description for an investigations unit analyst and amend the Turlock Associated Police Officers non-sworn, non-dispatch salary schedule effective February 27th. Staff is requesting a new job description for an investigations unit analyst to provide the police department the ability to fill this critically needed position and improve public services, as this new position is necessary due to the nearly every case investigation involving a cellular data device or a computer, along with supporting general investigative work. This new position will also allow for more effective and efficient workflow, as Director Moreno mentioned, for processing and analyzing digital evidence, preparing comprehensive reports, and testifying in court as an expert witness in public service, and meet the business needs and the demands of the Turlock Police Department. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Director? Yeah, open it to public. Anybody? All right, closing it, bring it back.
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Abram?
Yes.
Councilmember Bixel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Franco?
Yes.
Councilmember Moniz?
Yes.
Mayor Bublak?
Yes. Passes 5-0. Thank you, Director Dami. All right, council items for future consideration. Okay, council comments, announcements.
Welcome back, Gary Hampton. And I was reelected as the vice chair for the StanCog
Congrats.
committee last week. Yeah.
Stan
so
Cog needs you as vice chair. That's
first
awesome.
female in one of the chair positions.
That's awesome. Good job. Little League opens, the Little Darlings open this Saturday. It's the season opener. Come on out, Soderquist Park.
All right. And then I believe we have closed session. Madam Clerk?
For closed session, item 12A, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, California Government Code 54956.9D2, potential cases 2. Item 12B, conference with legal counsel, initiation of litigation, California Government Code 54956.9D4, potential cases 1.
All right, and we will report out should we have something. If not, we'll see you in a couple weeks. I need one more. You're good right there. All right. So we are back. There's nothing to report out, and have a safe night.